Thank you, Craig. We got the thumbs up from Craig.
Getting the go-ahead from our producer, and here we go.
I think you flipped us off, but I'll take it as a thumbs up. Anyway, good evening, everybody. This is Renowned and Feared. You're joining us tonight with my co-host, Archer King. Say hello,
What's up,
Archer.
man? Hello.
Hi, Archer. My name is Pax, and we're going to be your trusty guides through the Total War Warhammer fantasy podcast. And today, it's all about the Slaaneshi pleasure cults.
Emo boy.
It's all about edgy boys and pleasure cults and multiple
Everything
personality.
Dark Elf. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, everything that's involved with being a dark elf. None of it really good or politically correct. But so we'll tiptoe between the slavery and the sex cults, and we'll figure out a way to pass it on to you, our listener.
Mostly by talking about how good the slave economy is.
The slave economy is it was booming once you get the hang of it.
Thank you, 20,000 a turn.
Oh yeah. So let's see here. So Malus Darkblade is who we're covering today. He's the newest dark elf addition to the roster.
Also the newest overall.
Yeah, he's the newest overall. He came out with Clan Eshin in the Shadow and the Blade, and he is known as the Tyrant of Graef. He offers quite a distinct, play style, unlike any of the other legendary lords. It seems like Creative Assembly gets more creative as they go along.
Gotta make them stand out somehow, yeah.
They definitely do make him stand out, and to varying degrees of success, I'd say, depending on I think how your game goes. But because I definitely had two different scenarios go on for myself.
Okay, good to know. Same.
Yeah. So Malus Darkblade is he's I've heard him described as a teen male power trip. But he sounds more to me like I don't know if you're familiar with the series Berserk.
Yep. You're gonna compare him to Guts right now.
No. I was gonna compare him to, well, maybe the obvious distinction is Griffith, because I read at some point he gets skinned alive.
Okay. Yeah. No. Fair enough. Actually, that makes more sense. Yeah. I was like, I don't know. Guts is kind of a good guy, and Malice is not so much. But Griffith is a good comparison.
Yeah, Guts has many redeeming qualities, whereas Malice and Griffith do not. And anyway, so to get into Malice, his surname Darkblade is actually, from what I understand, it's a name given to bastards.
Yeah.
Because his mother was I think a Cain cultist.
She was like a witch elf. A very famous one, but not his father's wife, I guess.
And I mean, there seems to be some commonalities between high elves and dark elves, more so than they'd probably admit to. One of them being sleeping around. But Malice's background, it's I was thinking about it earlier, and if to draw another comparison, he's a lot like Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones, but turned up to 11. I mean, there's incest, there's betrayal from your father, not
handsomeness.
So much the handsomeness. Yeah, his voice acting definitely comes through in this game. It'd be interesting if he had that more suave personality going, but most of the time he's just kind of screaming at the player every time you command him.
I was gonna say, unless he just screams instead of speaking eloquently.
Yeah, you're like, I want you to move over here, and it's like, I'm doing this because I choose to.
Yeah. So, you do not control me, dude. I'm literally moving you right now. This is 100% me.
Well, some people believe free will is an illusion, and in his case, it is, at least part of the time.
Partially.
Yes, because at some point in his history, there's quite a few novels about this. Apparently, after I don't remember too much of his early years, except he kind of got screwed over and owed a lot of people a lot of money, and ended up going north into the Chaos Wastes, where he was. He did get in touch with the demon Zarkand. I don't remember the name of the temple.
I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but Kol Hadar.
Kol Hadar, yeah. Yeah, and he went up there in search of treasure, and he apparently set free the demon Zarkant, who is a demon of Slaaneshi. Pleasure for pleasure's sake, and it invaded his body and mind, and for
soul.
His soul, yeah, his soul became forfeit. And you would think this wouldn't make too much difference for a dark elf. I mean, it doesn't seem too much of a lifestyle change. But for a dark elf, they're very driven. They're very free will orientated. They don't like being told what to do, even if it's something they enjoy. And this kind of drives a self-motivated man like Malice a little insane.
A little bit.
Yeah,
partially because he's possessed, and partially because he doesn't want to be possessed.
Yeah, even though it grants him lots of power. So the long and short of it is, the way it works is, as long as he's awake, he's in control. But when he falls asleep, he kind of does a Tyler Durden, and Zarkand takes over, and he gets all this power and regeneration, and but it can act in not according to his plans.
Like, I don't want to be whispered to all the time.
Yeah, so he's constantly being even in his waking hours, he's constantly being tormented by this voice that's kind of just I don't know, I don't know if this is just normal teenage angst, but I feel like I could relate during a certain time of my life. You're constantly hearing that voice telling you, you're shit, and and just to fight everybody.
Yeah, no, Malice is actually like an 18-year-old boy who listens to way too much My Chem.
But hey, My Chemical Romance was the shit, and I don't know if it stands up today, but I'm gonna
it
stand
absolutely
by
it.
Does. Hell yeah. So once he got possessed by this demon, he traveled back down to Hagrief, where he was originally from, and at some point he gets captured and tortured. And probably the most stunning example of his newfound powers is he has the flesh just skinned off of him, and as a form of torture. And I don't know if this plays into a part, but I was reading on the wiki that it says his mother was sort of protecting him, but really she was just trying to use the demon to her own ends as well, since she was part of a Slaaneshi cult.
And I do think it's worth mentioning that Malice went, after being possessed by Zarkand, in search of 5 artifacts, which was supposed to be his release from Zarkand, but more dark elf trickery, demon trickery, whatever you want to call it. He was betrayed, I guess, but also just deceived by Zarkand.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure if Zarkand got exactly what he wanted, because Zarkand is still trapped inside him, isn't he?
Yes. Well, like in terms of like a gameplay where we're at perspective, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the game doesn't have you pursue these 5 artifacts, except the Warp Sword of Cain, not to be confused with the Sword of Cain, which is
completely different. One glows red, the other one is just kind of good.
Yeah, and I hear competing theories on if the Warp Sword of Cain is actually created by the same god, or if either way, it's an old weapon. Yeah, that was kind of left behind by demons in some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, kind of like the sword was put. Where was the Warp Sword found? I can't remember. Was it underneath Hagrief? Because I know the city itself was built on top of some ancient ruins.
I believe so. I'm not too sure about the actual warp sword being located under the city.
Well, regardless, Malice comes into possession as into a number of artifacts, each possessing certain powers like magic nullification. I'm not sure if the other one's probably physical resistance, but the most iconic one was the Warp Sword of Cain, which you have in this game after a quest battle. Well, it's not really a quest battle. You just have to complete some quests.
I mean, it is a quest battle.
What was it? I think I just had to destroy an army of beastmen. I can't remember.
Yeah, you fight like a chaos army, but that's the Warp Sword of Cain.
Oh, yeah,
quest.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, you got to fight Kolek the Sun Eater. Yeah.
Yeah, and just a shit ton of dragon ogres.
Man, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I was like, I remember this beastman army was wandering all over my territory, and it would not let me to declare war on it for the longest time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, until the quest activates. But yeah, we'll get to that. It was very bizarre. I had two very bizarre things happen on my completed playthrough.
Okay.
One was very fortunate, and the one we just discussed was kind of just confusing.
Kind of a big question mark with that one.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. So, do you know more about him? Because there's so much history into Malus Darkblade. Like I said, there's about 5 novels that I'm aware of, and I haven't had a chance to read it. Neither of us have had a chance to read them.
Yeah, a couple weeks isn't enough to really get a hold of them, play the whole campaign, and go through half a dozen novels.
No, I'm not even sure of the length, but they're out there. And maybe one day in the future we'll take the time needed to read them, because he's definitely got a long story that I was surprised, considering that Marcus Wolfhard has like no background, and then we go to Malus Darkblade and he's got so much lore.
Yeah, and I think we'll see that sort of varying degrees on lore, because we could talk about Tyrion for 3 hours.
Oh God, yeah, you could. Tyrion, Malekith, the High Elves have, background stories for days.
Exactly. Yeah, and someone like Marcus is like, yeah, he just kind of shot a giant, killed some more shit, and then this is where he is.
Yeah. So, like we said, how the campaign starts off, we're not really sure. The game makes no mention of these artifacts, other than you're sent to the far southeast of the old world. Does the Southlands technically count as the old world?
They must. I don't know what else they'd be.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because it's the Dragon Isles and Mortal Empires. And something else in Vortex. I'm not too sure, because I just played Mortal Empires.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did Vortex, but I'll bring up the names in a few minutes. But yeah, you're sent to the far southeast, and you actually have you still maintain your capital in Hagreef. It's just to the side, just to the east of where Malekith starts off. So it's interesting to have these two territories that are basically a world apart. And the very beginning, you're offered a choice to either keep the city, or you can sell off the city for like 20,000 gold, I think it is. And it's a handsome sum of money, especially at the start.
More than any other campaign, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you're gonna need it. We'll get into the special features, the mechanics of this legendary lord called the possession and elixir mechanic. But before we get into that, I think that do you think that sets us up really well for getting into
for where the story is with Malus in terms of the game? Yes, there's a lot of information, but most of it's just not pertinent to where we are. If you're interested, definitely worth at least just reading through like his wiki, even just to get a sort of sense of it. But I'm sure the novels are very worth it as well.
Yeah, and it'll take you a little bit of time to work through the wiki as well. It's not short.
Yeah.
All right. So, like we said earlier, he's a member of the Dark Elf race, and they have their race attributes. They get to deal with black arcs, which you will use to great effect. They're basically mobile cities, and they provide long-range artillery support as long as you're within range. as well as a variety of other bonuses. Like I think there's a compartment you can build on it that increases the amount of slaves you captured, like we mentioned. Yep.
Yeah, as well as like recruitment from the Black Ark.
Yeah, you can recruit kind of while on the move from the Black Ark. You can build military buildings inside of it, and it definitely keeps your momentum going when you don't have to fall back to a territory where you have, if all your spearmen get killed, you can just recruit them while you're on the move, as long as you're within the sphere of influence that the Black Arks provide.
Yeah,
and they also, like I said, they provide fire support. So there's 3 different types of attacks. One's kind of like a very quick laser attack. There's a kind of a bombardment type spell, and then the last one is this big, I'll call it the Moab. Especially when you get that upgraded, it sends people flying, and it's quite satisfying if you can get it into a group of guys.
Yeah, just kind of drop a bomb on them.
Oh yeah, just dropping all 3 of those in quick succession is true. It's really fun.
Satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a game changer because you due to the possession mechanic, it has a lot of bonuses and drawbacks, and we'll get into that. And the Black Ark helps you kind of compensate for the difficulties that will present to you. The second mechanic after the Black Arks is the slaves, which is not unique to Malus Darkblade, but it is to the Dark Elves. And well, they're bad boys. The good thing is they don't discriminate. They'll enslave anybody, including their
Yeah.
Truly
and
egalitarian.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I know. I was just gonna say, like, it very much is the core of their economy. Like, you can build elf treasuries, I think they're called. Basically, just a little bit of income, but the slaves make up a huge part of playing as the Dark Elves, just because, like, how many slaves you capture is basically how much money you make.
Yeah, there's a precise formula you can go into the game to see how it works out, but it kind of multiplies the amount of money you're making. So if you put them in and you can also control which territories take slaves, because you can't control whether you tax one of your provinces, which is unique. There's no controlling of taxation. It entirely depends upon slaves.
Yeah, exactly.
And usually the way it works is you have kind of the way I do it is you have your main slave colony, let's put it like that.
Yep.
Where you send all of your slaves. And as you kind of conquer and expand, you usually set those new territories not to accept slaves, because the more slaves you have, the more public order penalties you incur. So it's a balance. Sometimes, depending on the amount of slaves you want, you kind of have to, which you don't really have to do with other races, at least in my opinion. You do have to dedicate, like, maybe, in your main settlement, you'll need a public order building. I think they're called the torture posts. And then in one of your, minor settlements, you'll also have to build one in order to kind of control it all. Unless you want to be farming rebellions, which you can do as the Dark Elves,
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah.
And more rebellions means more slaves. So it's a self-feeding mechanism.
Yeah. Those slaves you just captured have risen up, and now you can capture them again.
There's less of them that time, but you still have some. They also play into the rights. We'll get into the specific rights for Malus Darkblade, one of them being very important. But usually your rights, I think maybe 1 or 2 of them use money, but most of them, if not all of them, require the sacrifice of slaves.
Yeah. Normally with Dark Elves, it's all slaves.
It is all slaves, okay.
Yeah, Malus has the Beastmaster one that's money.
Oh, okay, yeah. The Beastmaster one I think that was how I failed in my first campaign. When we get into that, I always forget about those rights, because they're very situationally dependent. And I watched a Let's Player use that very early on in the campaign, and I was like, well, that's it. It's OP in the beginning, but the rights are very important with Malus Darkblade. Do not forget about them.
Yeah. I was spamming Gift of the Witch King every time I could get it.
Which one did Gift of the Witch King do?
That was the hero summon. So it was based on how much territory Malekith had. Like every territory counted as like a experience point.
That explains a lot because I was definitely using that as well. Because
Yeah.
until you have the Sorcerer's Tower or whatever it is, that was the only way you could get them.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a gamble with the sorcerers, but you can like spam K9 assassins with basically no repercussions.
I probably could have done that a lot more. And I usually just try to work with I always go for magic right at the beginning, since Malice has some great buffs and debuffs that definitely, affect other units, but he does not really have any other magic.
Speaking of buffs, I just want to mention that Malice has my favorite perk of any person in the game, Contempt and Hatred, where he just gets weapon strength for fighting everything and anything.
That is one of the best. He's got some hilarious ones. Once we get into the game, I gotta. For some reason, there's a second one. It's. I'll bring it up later, but I have a close second for that one.
Yeah.
But the last race attribute is Murderous Prowess. In each battle, depending on how many people you kill and are killed on your team, eventually you get this army-wide buff that activates that upgrades their armor-piercing damage. I think it increases their leadership as well as maybe melee attack. But it's one of those buffs you can. It isn't always a good thing, but at least it's something. It does. I feel like it turned a battle or two. For sure.
Yeah, it can, for sure.
Although you're usually, it's one of those butthole puckering moments when that's what you're relying on, towards the end.
Yeah, it's not usually like a game changer. Especially, I don't know like what you usually run with Dark Elves, but it's really good for your infantry. But if you're not running a huge amount of infantry, it doesn't do that much just because it's not like a per, like it's per unit, right? Instead of like per model.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was that.
Yeah, so like something with high model count will do better with that buff, obviously.
No, I definitely noticed like my spearmen. I didn't really use many other melee infantry aside from the spearmen just to hold the line, because I was definitely very beast focused.
Okay,
trying to lean into his his speciality, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, that covers the race attributes. So, like we said, he's the Tyrant of Hagrief, which is the actual, I guess, faction you could call it. I got a bone to pick with Creative Assembly. It says its suitable climates are mountains and jungles. And I don't know if you're the type of guy who can be comfortable in the jungle, or as comfortable in the jungle in a mountain, like in a cold mountain. You can pretty much exist anywhere, and you run into a lot of territory in this. Even in the Vortex campaign, you run into a lot of territories that are either, the yellow, where it's like kind of uncomfortable and adds some, public order penalties and increases building times. But like deserts, are almost uninhabitable, so I avoided those.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like it does actually expand the Dark Elves to be able to take a lot of things. Like I feel like it was actually a really good buff in Mortal Empires, just because you're kind of surrounded by it.
Really, I thought of Mortal Empires. I didn't play. I played that campaign a little bit a while back, and I thought you were pretty much outside the islands that you start off on, kind of surrounded by uninhabitable territory.
No, there's the province sort of like right off the Dragon Isles is like yellow-orange, sort of the unsuitable. But for the most part, going forward, unless you go into like Nagash, like Nagash is our territory, because those are like red. But I think those are for red for everyone. But you pretty much move like into the mountains, which is all green, obviously.
I just know on the campaign intro movie, it showed what I assumed would be my kind of path of conquest, where it's showing the path of Malice with like X's where battles are as he's moving north into the Southlands, or north up the Southlands. And I didn't follow that course at all. I don't know if you remember that opening cinematic.
Yeah, kind of.
So, I mean, you are right though. Those climates, I made it work, and there were definitely opportunities. I definitely don't think if I played a campaign again, even if it was Vortex, I do not think it would even go the same as it went this time.
No.
Yeah, I tried like 3 times. One was kind of like a failure to launch kind of thing. The second one ended in failure, and then the third one, yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, because I ended up with 2 as well, and they played out very differently. I think both with Mortal Empires and Vortex, it's very much like whatever you want to do. Just you can totally commit to Graef and just go from there and pretty much play like a Malekith campaign, or you can like just commit to the expedition as well, which makes it completely different.
Yeah, it's definitely cool that you have those 2 opportunities. Although I think in the spirit of what it was trying to get you to was to kind of give it up at least. I mean, anyway, I don't want to get into that this second. So the underneath the faction effects, he's possessed by the demon Zarkan, and this is the core mechanic of Malice's whole campaign. Is you have on a scale of -10 to +10, kind of it's a possession meter. A lot like the hostility meter,
Oh yeah, similar. Yeah.
You start off at the positive end with +10, and it gives you huge. I think it's ward resist. Everybody in your army gets high melee attack bonus. It's definitely, the game is trying to get you to lean into this kind of ebb and flow. I definitely felt like I was getting into a kind of a rhythm of when I would conquer and when I would hold back and kind of build.
Right. Yeah, because it does have some negatives with the +10, with the replenishment rate going down like 60%, and as well as some public order debuffs as well. I think it's like -4 when it's maxed out.
Tell me about what it feels like to be possessed by a Slaaneshi demon.
I wish I could do that so I could tell you. I'm like, man, Zarkan is like I hate him.
Yeah,
Like...
I think I was possessed by a Slaaneshi demon one time.
Back in college.
Yeah, it was in my quarter life crisis. It convinced me to be in one of those open relationships that was incredibly shallow and self-destructive and utterly pointless. I wouldn't recommend a Slaaneshi demon possession.
Oh, good.
I'm sure Malice will tell you just the same.
Well, Malice does have the potion, or
the elixir.
The elixir, yeah, from the big man Malekith himself, which decreases it by 10 every time. So if you're at 0, go back to -10, and 10 obviously back to 0. And 0 being the neutral point, whereas like full possession +10 is the melee attack buff, ward save for Malice. Actually, I think it's for all units in the army.
The ward save is just for him, but the melee attack is for every unit.
Right, and then a couple of debuffs with the -60% replenishment rate, which is basically 100%. Just with the way the Dark Elves work, you just don't get anything essentially past like 7 possession. And then -10 gives you some buffs to your public order, and I believe your slave economy as well. But you do lose some leadership and melee attack for your armies.
Yeah, when you're in full control, meaning -10, it definitely, it was a huge. This is what I ended up relying on. You get +100 growth to all your provinces. Yeah, which is pretty big, at least for a turn.
It's substantial, yeah.
Yeah, you get public order +10, and you unlock the right of the War Master or Beastmaster, whichever one it is. Is it the War Master? Let me see. War
I think
Master.
it's
Yes.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was
Yeah.
gonna say it's definitely Beastmaster, but
Well, it's
clearly I'm
definitely
incorrect.
it's definitely beasts, but yeah, it's the right of the War Master summons an army of beasts to your capital. But on the
Mhm.
downside of being in full control is you have a -10 melee attack for all your units, which you will definitely notice if you get into a fight.
Yeah, and it makes a difference. Like the Dark Elf roster is very balanced, I would say. Just that you can kind of deal with everyone pretty well, but it is sort of specific in what you're dealing. Like if you have -10 melee attack against someone like the dwarves, who I fought a lot, you're gonna lose.
Yeah, especially some of the units like the witch elves,
Mhm.
they're very much dependent their effectiveness on their melee attack.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah, they're anti-infantry.
yeah, and if that's low, it's gonna seem like they're just
It's
getting into
low.
yeah, it's gonna seem like they're just getting into a slap fight with the
Yeah.
other the enemy there.
Yeah. It's I didn't find myself actually going much below 0 very often.
See, I was all the time. Like I buffed Malice to be focused towards his Zarkant, his transformation ability,
Mhm.
and I almost I I I don't think I ever used it outside the very beginning of the game.
So you're keeping it like 0 to 10 sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I'd go to -10, and then I would get up to probably. Well, here's the thing. I learning how to use this possession mechanic was very difficult for me.
Okay.
Uh, I so sort of my failure to launch campaign, which only lasted a couple turns. I just knew I wasn't going anywhere. And the secondary campaign where I made it about like 25 turns until
Mhm.
I hadn't completely lost, but for all intents and purposes I had lost.
Yeah, it was I'm gonna last
Yeah,
3 more turns, not worth it.
yeah, exactly. I when you transform into Zarkand, your health constantly starts draining, and he does have an ability that sucks in the health from units around him. But whenever I had him at Zarkand, I just kind of I made the false assumption that he was invincible
Yep.
because yeah, because when you transform, your health gets all brought all the way up to full, and you're like, all right, so it's definitely powerful. But if you lean on it too much and the fight goes on for too long, Malice just he basically just passes out if nothing kills him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's not a trump card, but you do have to play it sort of like that, if that makes sense. It's not something you should like just go into the battle and pop. Because it's essentially like a ticking time bomb. Like you will at some point lose because you're constantly losing health.
Yeah, you don't go KO Ken times 10 unless you have to, and you only got you don't have that long to really benefit from it. But
Mhm.
I definitely did. Yeah, I'll save that for the kind of our campaign story. But it definitely did help me out, at least on one occasion. But like I said, I definitely leaned more into the Malice being more in control, uh, just because
Yeah, I definitely went the other way. I basically only popped the elixir when I needed replenishment
mm,
because it does go up by 2 per turn. Or is it 1?
it might be 2. I think it's 2.
I think it's 2.
It's definitely more than 1.
Yeah, you do gain 2 possession per turn. So even if you like revert all the way back, you've got basically 5 turns till you don't have replenishment again.
Yeah, and uh, you can't go without replenishment for very long.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you have to like loot and occupy. You have to take captives,
Yeah,
which
just based on how the dark elves work, you have to be constantly fighting.
yeah, and because the slaves just they can't seem to stay alive long enough.
They do die. It is a thing.
Mm. Which kind of plays into his other faction effect. He's got plus 50% productivity to his all of his quarries, like his marble mines, his gold mines,
I found that actually really, really useful. I'm not too sure how much use it was in Vortex, but in Mortal Empires, just because you end up in like the mountainous sort of area with the southern edge of the world mountains, there's a lot of gold and iron mines.
It would have been useful in my Vortex campaign because there's a settlement where you can get gold like pretty early on, and I let the defenders, the last defenders, get it, and I signed a non-aggression pact with them after the results of my failed campaign. So,
oh, and you're being all buddy with Croc-Gar.
Oh my god, yeah, me and Croc-Gar were tight for a while until I just started raiding him because I was a bastard.
Because you're Malus Darkblade, and why not?
Yeah, raiding. I'm a big fan of raiding. You get that you're saving on your the upkeep of the army raiding. You're getting money and you're getting slaves, constantly, and you can raid your friends and allies with almost no penalty. At least immediately.
Impunity. You just raid them for free.
It's just like going into your neighbor's yard and just like
taking his dog.
Taking his dog, his grill, and be like, I'll bring these back eventually. Let's see. So that kind of ties up his faction effects. As far as his lord effects go, which just relates to his own personal army, he's got a -% recruitment cost on pretty much everything Cold One related. So the Cold One Dread Knights, the chariots. What are they called? The Scourge Runner.
Scourge Runners. Yeah. Well, there's two. There's the just the Cold One chariots, and then the Scourge Runners.
Oh, okay. I didn't even realize there's a Cold One chariot.
Yeah, it's separated by a building, because I think the Scourge Runners were added in Shadow and the Blade.
Yeah, the Scourge Runner chariot. If you're a person who listened to our first episode and now you stumbled onto our second episode, the Empire, the Marcus's starting unit, or they call it the War Wagon. The Scourge Runner chariot is actually what the War Wagon should have been.
Yeah, it's honestly, like, I didn't find myself recruiting them a lot, but armor piercing missile damage, like, this should be what you look to, because that's a great example of it.
Yeah, this actually works. Real quick, Malice has got -50% upkeep on all the Cold One Knights, the Dread Knights, the Chariots, and the Scourge Runners, as well as +10 weapon strength for all of them. So he's very he likes riding those Velociraptors. He sees the strength and he's willing to keep them in line. But the Scourge Runner Chariots, I friggin' love those things. You start with one of them. The kind of the unique units you start with are the Bloodrack Medusa, a new addition to the game, the Cold One Knights, and the Scourge Runner Chariot. And to me, the standout was the Scourge Runner Chariot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you get 2 of those or 3 of those in your army, and as long as you're not in a siege, you can really do some damage. They're so fast. They've got a decent amount of ammo. I felt like one Scourge Runner Chariot unit could wipe out like a unit of spearmen from the High Elves with all of its ammunition.
Yeah, it'll almost take out like lower level infantry. Well, like late game, it does become a little bit more of just like a harass sort of annoyance more than like an actual damage dealer. But armor piercing, like all the way up, is solid.
When I ended up finally going to war with Croc-Gar, I did find them very useful for dealing with his airborne units. They would pull those away and basically take them out, and then I would bring them back in to support with the anti-large.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they are anti-large as well.
Mm-hmm. And once they run out of ammo, you can run over some skinks with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very fast. Like they're quite quick comparatively.
Yeah, they're not the most damaging as far as in melee with other chariots, but they'll get the job done on those basic units.
Yeah, and like you're basically just losing a charge bonus, which is kind of the draw of chariots, but like it's not a bad secondary use for them anyway.
No, and they've got some. Sorry to keep going on my love about.
We're just like Scourge Runners are awesome.
They are, because that's what the war wagon should have been. But they got some range on them, man. They can outrange like a lot of what I was going up against, except the high elves, which I didn't spend much time fighting. Other than in the Vortex campaign, you got to take out the immediate high elf threat. But
yeah,
after that, those Scourge Runner chariots outrange, I think, everything I went up against.
Oh, really?
Not counting artillery, of course, but as far as excluding warps, the goddamn Giselles.
Yeah. Not great against them, but
no. But as far as basic missile troops, it outranged them all. So constantly pulling away their archers, and great support unit.
Yeah,
the Cold One Knights that you start out with, I thought were very underwhelming, mainly because I didn't go up against anything large, especially since I made peace with Krokar really early on.
Yeah.
In the Mortal Empires, do you start with the Cold One Knights as well?
Yeah, you do. It's honestly like I don't love Cold One Knights or the Dread Knight variant. They're okay, but they're like, just for their sort of cost to effectiveness ratio, they're not great. Just because like level 4 and 5 unit cavalry shouldn't fall to pieces against everything.
I tried leaning into a role playing type. I tried to lean into his unit of choice.
Yeah,
and I found good uses for the Dread Knights, the anti-infantry armor piercing variant.
Right.
Those ones I found a good use for, mainly because you have no other real cavalry.
Yeah.
But as far as the Cold One Knights go, when I did go up against the Lizard Men, and I tried to use them against the bigger beasts, they basically held them there for maybe 60 seconds and then utterly collapsed.
Yeah, like anti-large cav is usually anti-cavalry, if that makes sense. Just because it does have a low model count, right? So like you put 24 versus like 60 blackguards, like one of them does a lot better.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have used them against. It said anti-large on them, so I was like, well, maybe that means it can take on a Carnosaur.
It just means that gives them like a bonus, which like they'll do more damage, but they're not gonna hold as well. Like I said, I think most people use them for like anti-cavalry units.
Yeah. Maybe that was my mistake. I feel pretty stupid now. But
no, like I think it's just honestly more of like an online thing. Like more multiplayer battle is where people usually like min-max that, where they're just like, oh, I gotta send this unit against this unit. But like I don't think the Cold One Knights altogether are fantastic. The minus 50% upkeep does make it like viable, but overall, with the high elf or the dark elf roster, there's a lot more you could be spending your money on.
Yeah, I think my final army ended up with none of the Cold One Knights, but I did have 3 units of Dread Knights that were maxed out of the way.
Yeah,
and they were very good situationally. Not so much running down, but they were a decent flanking force, and I didn't really have any AP infantry,
right.
So I relied on the bolt, oh my god, what are they called?
Bolt throwers.
Bolt throwers.
Yep.
Or are those the artillery ones? I'm just talking about the crossbowmen.
Like the dark shards or shades?
Oh, dark shards. Yeah, dark shards.
Yeah.
I still haven't even played around with shades. But
oh my god, really?
See,
no way.
No, I haven't.
No way, really?
Yeah, are they good?
Bro, you're literally like skipping on, in my opinion, the best dark elf unit.
Okay.
No way! I can't believe you've never used shades.
No, I've never had a reason to. I mean, I've got other things that do armor piercing, so I was like, what do I need those for? They just seem pretty expensive.
Well, it's so worth it.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
I guess I'm gonna have to try them, but I've literally never even built the building that lets you produce them.
Really? Yeah, like shades. It depends on what you go for. Don't go for dual weapon, but like base shades and shades with greatswords are just as good or better, in my opinion, than dark shards because they have vanguard deployment.
Ooh.
And they can fire whilst moving. Or not fire whilst moving, but they do have stock. So they're a little bit better that way. And it just makes them like a flanking force rather than like you do have to use them differently than dark shards, but they're just as good in terms of like missiles. And then in actual, like if you get into combat with some infantry, they hold up really well.
Yeah, I did hover over them a lot because when I saw that they had great swords as well, I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I just never.
Wow, I am blown away.
Well, I was focused on making hydras, dragons, and stuff, man.
Yeah.
That's and the fucking cold ones that were almost useless. Not the dread knights. The dread knights were okay, but so the last starting unit, the Bloodrack Medusa, which I realized kind of useless when it's on its own, but I created one army that had 4 of them, and having 4 Medusas is actually pretty viable. They do some, especially against cavalry, because the cavalry move too fast for archers to really get a hold of, but the Medusas, their missiles are like instant, and they are armor piercing. And if you buff them up, if you have a lord, just a generic lord that's a beastmaster, you can really spec him towards the beasts, and you can get the reload time on those Medusas down really far.
Yeah. Did you use just the Medusas, or did you use like the chariot version as well?
I never got to the chariot. I never even tried out the chariot version.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's fairly similar, except it's like a little bit faster because obviously it's a chariot, and then I think it's just a little bit more damage. But both are like really, really good, like all arounders. It's kind of funny you use them like that, sort of like anti-cav, because I use them sort of for 3 things. Like usually, when the lines clash, I'll get a Medusa behind the enemy sort of line because they do just like big pot shots into the back. But they're also really good at like sniping enemy lords or heroes.
Yeah, I when I had that army of 4 of them, that's when I was going up against Krokar, and them combined with the dark shards, a couple of those, they could take down one of their beasts fairly quick and efficiently.
Yeah.
Because they and if they get into melee, they kind of slither around the battlefield a lot, and they'll punch through a line. And like you said, you can wind up behind an enemy unit fairly easily. It just seems to be their natural way of fighting, is just to kind of slither around really fast and do some damage and reposition for more missile attacks that are really where its power comes from.
Because they are fast, but they don't have a whole lot of range, so it's mostly just like slither over here, shoot into the back of these guys, slither over here, shoot the cavalry.
Yeah, I use them a fair bit against the Clan Eshin. Worked its way south to me, and those those Medusas, at least on their chaff clan rats and stuff, they one of those could stand up on its own.
Oh yeah. It'll wreck low level infantry for sure.
Yeah, it was nice not having to worry about them so much, even though they were getting surrounded. So that covers just about the basic information leading up to Malice's campaign. As we said, we think the story or the setup for the campaign is sometime after Malice collects. Maybe the game just totally disregards the artifacts he was supposed to collect, which I feel like it. I feel like it does. Really, the campaign, at least the Vortex, is Malekith has the elixir, which lets you stay awake. and he sells that to you throughout the course of your campaign at increasing costs. And in the idea of the Vortex campaign is to collect the Scrolls of Harkardi, I think is the name, and for you to send back to Malekith for his Vortex ritual. And once you complete the main quest, if you choose to continue, the elixir, he gives you the recipe and it's free. And that's kind of Malice's real motivation in the campaign, is just to get the components to create the elixir, so he can be in control once more.
Which is not what Mortal Empires is about. It's the same sort of idea. Like, it's not about the scrolls, but you do want to get the free elixirs, obviously. But it's only after you gain control out of 8 provinces.
Yeah, it took me, I think, 100. How many turns did it take me? It took me exactly 101 turns to get all the scrolls I needed. I probably could have been faster. So we'll get into the campaign now. Well, it makes sense. The Vortex campaign on the smaller map, it puts you in the Sea of Dread. I don't know if it's called the same thing in the Mortal Empires.
There's like 8 different sea names around there, but more or less, yes.
Yeah, either way, the similar thing between both campaigns is you always start off on a kind of like a collection of islands. There's always 3 of them, except in the Vortex, mercifully, you're only fighting high elves. And in the Mortal Empires, which I know, Archer, you did, that you're fighting lizardmen. Our old buddies from
Well, the good news is that like the dark elves actually have armor piercing, so they stand a chance.
How did that first mission go? Because remember when I told you just auto resolve it, man? I don't know if you listened to that advice.
No, I didn't, because it actually nukes one of your units. Like, you lose a dread spear right off the bat.
Oh, okay.
Which is actually important because you sort of need the troops to, like, I'll just go for it. I played 2 like main campaigns. I ended up losing my first campaign to a glitch like 100 turns in.
What?
Yeah, heartbreaker.
Just hit me with that story really quick, because I gotta hear about the glitch.
The glitch. Okay, so I was I did like the beginning thing. I took over like the Dragon Isles. Went and fought Clan Eshin, because that's basically your next big opponent.
There's no distance separating you in the Mortal Empires campaign. I know that.
No, as soon as you get off those little islands, it's just like, hey, what up, man? Your encounter with Snake Itch. And then after that, I moved on to Karakazul, which is that like southern dwarf sort of kingdom. Took those guys. Well, I was actually about to take their capital and sort of wipe them off the map, and they got confederated by Karazakrak. I literally, I went and like ran into my girlfriend. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened. And then after that, actually, one of the campaign victories is to destroy the last defenders, which is like south from the Dragon Isles where you start, because Krokgar starts in like the very southeast corner.
Yeah.
So went and fought him in that sort of battle. I think it was actually taking the Teotika or something like that, I think is the name of the city. But
sure.
Whatever. As soon as the battle ended, like it just crashed to desktop, the game did. And I was like, oh, that's weird, and kind of sucks because that was a half an hour battle. And tried to load it up, and all the save files were corrupted. And I was like, okay, cool. So guess we're starting over. But it was kind of good because actually in the first one, I took the money from Head Graef, and the second one I was like, I kind of did that for 100 turns, so let's try the other.
That's very unfortunate to lose your campaign like that. It's one thing to kind of lose it, and then Oh man, I the days of Xbox when you'd lose your your Morrowind character, Fallout 3. Well, that's the 360, but yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. So tell me about kind of the beginning. How did that battle that you have to do at the beginning of the Mortal Vampires?
Yep.
What did you do?
How do you do it?
Yeah, how do you do that?
I found actually, just because I had to restart and trying something new, if you move, because you start with a black arc, like right outside that city, and then Malice is like right there.
Mm-hmm.
I found actually, if you sit, because Malice starts just out of the way of reinforcement range from the garrison. So if you just leave him where he is and move the black arc away so that they can't move to attack it, they will actually attack you over the end turn without the garrison support. So you basically fight the army that's sitting there one-on-one, which is like a fairly even battle, plus you have black arc support. So you do get those like bombardments from it.
It's so obvious. I'm angry at myself for not figuring that out. I feel that pressure of that first move where the game's like, hey, here's what you do. You just go for this town and that little army right there.
Well, and that's how I figured it out too. I was just like, I don't want to. It worked out because they just attacked me.
Yeah, that definitely seems a lot more feasible because, like I said, the only way I could win that battle was through auto-resolve if you attack the town with its, small garrison.
Yeah, like you're outnumbered and outclassed, so it's a little bit easier if you can separate them and use the black arc bombardments.
The Corsairs don't make much of a difference. They don't seem...
Against Lizardmen, not really. I mean, it kind of depends on what they're fighting, but yeah, like Saurus are always going to beat Dread Spears and Bleak Swords and even the Corsairs. So.
Yeah. And it's a little different too in Mortal Empires because I assume who you went after next would be Clan Eshin.
Yeah, like I said in my first campaign, and I'm just going to go back and forth, I guess. In the first one, it was like a long, probably 40 turn war with Eshin because they'd basically taken everything in that area. There's an NPC greenskin faction there. Yeah. That in the first one they got destroyed. I didn't even fight them, but they got destroyed by Eshin. In the second one, it was actually kind of nice because they had actually beat Eshin back to the point where they had left Eshin with 2 cities. So it was a little bit easier fighting greenskins than fighting the Deathmaster himself, who just murders every lord or hero you put against him.
Yeah, at least in the Vortex campaign, I had quite a bit of build-up. You do not run into Clan Eshin remotely, so close to the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So you fight like the High Elves in the first couple turns?
Yeah. You start off on a collection of islands just southeast of what looks like Africa. The Southlands.
Definitely not Africa.
Not Africa. They're called Tor Elisor. It's just
NPC faction, yeah.
Yeah, NPC High Elf faction, and it's kind of you get the same. It's weird. It's kind of the same setup. You're sitting outside of a town with the High Elves with your black arc just outside. Fortunately, with the High Elves, it's a lot more straightforward. On the campaign that I lost, I had a much more interesting start.
Mm-hmm.
I took over the first minor settlement that you're obviously supposed to take.
Right.
And then instead of heading directly west to their main settlement and port, because all the settlements in the Vortex campaign in that first province are ports.
Right.
I went to the next minor settlement because I'll be like, I'll go to the easier, battle next.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that meant by the time I got to their main settlement, they had already
had a 20 stack.
Well, fortunately, they didn't have a 20 stack, but shit, it might have been a 20 stack because
close.
It was a lot, and that's when I was relying on the power of Zarkand. And for the first time, usually if I run into a battle that I can't win after like 3 or 4 times, I'm like, okay, I lost,
Yeah.
you know? And since it's so early in the campaign, I'm just like, you know what? I got to figure out a way to beat this battle. And since I was the attacker, even though I had less troops, it seemed like the AI knew what it should do. Because on my edge of the map, I had a really big hill, and on it, I don't know, it was like 2 hills facing each other.
Yeah.
And I tried tactically moving forward and sort of trying to take them out, but they had, way more archers than I did.
Yeah.
I think I only had the 2 starting units of dark shards because I still couldn't make them yet.
Right.
I tried bum rushing them. That didn't work. Then eventually I used my Scourge Runner chariot and just pissed them off enough to where they finally came at me.
That's how you play Warhammer 2. You just goad the enemy into attacking you.
Exactly. And I think the Scourge Runners took out an entire, regiment of spearmen on their own.
Probably,
yeah. And I ended up losing almost my entire army. I think Malice, after transforming, I think survived just barely with little HP left. And eventually I won. But that was definitely not the smart thing to do. The obvious and much smarter way to play it is to take that first minor settlement, immediately move towards the major settlement of the province, and then kind of go from there. Because that major settlement always has a couple more units, and it's just... you don't want to save that for last.
From. Yeah, exactly. And it is kind of the same thing with Mortal Empires too, because you have to go to the faction capital because they're probably going to have a fairly substantial army plus the garrison, and you pretty much have to use every turn walking up there with your Black Ark to recruit.
And I don't even remember how I ended up fighting on the hill, because if it was the major capital, maybe they were standing outside. I think they had their general sitting outside the city and recruiting, because it was definitely on a battlefield where I was on a hill and they were on a hill, and they got their reinforcements. So I think it was the city reinforcing.
Well, wasn't walls anyway, but yeah.
No walls.
Because that would have been harder.
Yeah. I guess that's probably why they were willing to face me outside, because the AI ran that calculation and it was pretty much correct.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and high elves in the beginning can just like spam archers and pretty much come away with no casualties.
Yeah, the key to fighting the high elves is to get them before they can spam those archers. Your units will definitely be better than their spearmen. That's
true, yeah. What? So at that point, you had basically like the starting province.
Yep. From there, like I said, this was in the Vortex campaign. I moved to the northwest. There's a city over there. You know what? Why don't you tell me about your next move before I get into? Yeah, because on Mortal Empires, because you said you on your final campaign you took on Clan Eshin. What was the difficulties that Clan Eshin was given to you on your first playthrough? Because it sounds like I got bogged down by clan wars, something awful.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand the problems that the Skaven seem to have when they get the bonuses from the AI. But,
I think like the big thing with fighting Skaven actually is just because it's almost the opposite of the Dark Elf roster. Like Dark Elves are very like low number, like it's quality over quantity, right?
Yeah,
so you're never gonna have like they're always gonna outnumber you, because a unit of clan rats is double anything you have infantry wise. And then I just had trouble sort of keeping them together because it's just too hard to have like 2 full armies. Like you have Malice with the 20 stack and another army that has like 4 or 5 units to sort of hold, because you just can't afford 2 stacks.
Yeah, and the Skavens can easily afford multiple armies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it wasn't so much as like I was losing, it was just hard to hold on to the territory and also know where they are because they could just recruit and run around so quickly that when I was over, say, taking like Flayed Rock, which is like the easternmost city, and it's like a turn or two away from anything else, they would go even farther west and like settle something there.
Yeah, and they can also move and ambush you on the attack at the same time. I don't know if you had to deal with that at all.
I did get ambushed, but I don't think I ever like lost a battle to them just because I had one army that was doing all the fighting. And like I said, you just are fighting clan rats and slingers, so there's not a huge amount of actual damage being done. It's just getting worn down, and then you don't have replenishment. You're not in like friendly territory, so you're kind of waiting on the Black Ark to give you replenishment and trying to get money to take a potion every once in a while.
Not to mention, the problem with fighting the Skaven is even if you win a battle, they often have a ton of survivors. Like I'd face down 2 of their armies, and I'd be surprised that they each had like 1,000 surviving rats in each of them. Mm-hmm. And if you don't wipe out those units, they just replenish.
Yeah,
and it's so hard to run anything down on cold ones because they're too slow.
Yeah. And like Snickich himself was a bitch. Like I could not take him one-on-one with anything. Like nothing will one-on-one him in the early game. Like Malus will lose like pretty quickly. Like he can kind of go toe-to-toe with him if you like transition to Zarkan halfway through. But I didn't really want to do that, trying to keep my possession low so I could get replenishment, and also like I'd lose my most valuable piece by doing that as well. So like the only thing that really worked was like ping pong him between dark shards or shades or something. Like just missile fire.
And he moves very fast, and he's a small target.
Yeah, because like you can't outrun him either. Like nothing except very fast cavalry is getting away from him.
Riding on his cold one mount Spite doesn't really get you away from him, I noticed.
No, it does not, unless he decides he doesn't want to chase you anymore.
Which he will, which is the problem. Once he figures out, if you dogpile him enough, I think he realizes it and bails. Because I didn't fight him until the very near the end, and he's not afraid to run away and get and live and fight another day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of his character, because he does it very well. He's really good at killing my heroes.
Yeah. So just jumping back to my campaign. After I took those initial islands of the Sea of Dread, I moved northwest, and your 2 big contenders are you get the Last Defenders, led by Krokar. You got Clan Molder, and you've got another small Skaven NPC faction that are on the southeast coast of the Southlands. You got 2 tempting targets, and one of them is the Temple Avenue of Gold, and they've got a gold mine there. And on my first campaign, I took it from the Last Defenders which immediately put me at war, with the Last Defenders forever, and that becomes a big deal. Just to the south of the Temple Avenue of Gold, the Caverns of Sotek, and that's where they have the they got the scrolls there that you gotta you gotta build the Temple of Hakardi to collect the scrolls for your main campaign. And Clan Molder had that, so I immediately put myself at war with Clan Molder. And
Clan Molder's in that, is it?
Yeah, it's Clan Molder's there. In fact, when you collect how many scrolls is it? Well, after you send your first shipment of scrolls, it spawns an army of Skaven every time you send a shipment. And the first one is Clan Molder, and they're pretty easy, especially because you get a lot of spearmen, you got dark shards, and actually your cold one knights actually do a fair job against the giant rat guys. I forget what they're called.
Ogres, or the
rat ogres. They do a decent job against them. So that's kind of the first wave that you deal with. And fortunately, every time you win a battle against one of those quote unquote like kind of questy battles, you get 80% replenishment, which is so you basically get everybody back that you lost, provided that nobody got wiped out.
Right.
So I took those 2 cities, put myself at war with Clan Molder and Krokar, and almost immediately I took there's a city that's to the west that's owned by another subfaction of High Elves, and if you take that, you're immediately bumping at elbows with Clan Moors, who just comes right around the hook of the Southlands there.
Yeah.
And they went to war with me immediately. And I forgot to mention that my first playthrough that I lost, I decided to keep the city of Hagrief. So, so I think I did the inverse of you, where the first time I chose to keep it, and the second time I just gave it up.
Yeah.
So in the Vortex campaign, there's kind of an unintended consequence of keeping it. I mean, it is interesting to kind of do that 2-front war. You know, where I was planning on going defensively in Hagrief and its province, and going offensively in the south or in the Southlands.
Right.
But there's so many ruins over there that as you explore them, you get more scrolls of Hekardi. So you actually get your shipments absurdly fast if you get an agent up there that's searching them.
With Hagrief.
Yeah, with Hagrief. Because I mean, if in the Vortex campaign, there's so many cities over there that are just you know, ruins to explore.
Yeah, it's the same in Mortal Empires.
Yeah, and each time you explore one, I think you get like 40 scrolls or something like that. So you're just bouncing between them, leveling up your agent as you go. You know?
Yeah.
And I had pushed Krokar up the northern coast, like the east side of the Southlands. I think I had finally wiped him out. There's a city called the Golden Tower. It's a little ways up north.
I know it well.
Oh, okay. So you know it in the Mortal Empires too.
No, just in Vortex.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a very crucial kind of. It's one of those cities that's in a canyon, and if an enemy wants to go through it, they got to take on that garrison there.
Yeah.
And in my failed campaign, I had taken it to get the scrolls that are there, and when I had done that, Clan Moors spawned in their invasion because I'd sent another shipment in. And I had 3 armies of Clan Moors come at me at the same time, and they ambushed me. And
at the Golden Tower?
I was just outside the Golden Tower because I was starting to kind of push out, and it said I was fighting the Skaven, and I couldn't see them on, you know, the fog of war.
Right.
Even though I had a full army, I think I had screwed up, and I wasn't in range of my Black Arc either. Like, I think I was just outside of it.
Yeah, I think it would be just out.
Yeah, and 3 armies of Clan Moors friggin', you know, sprung an ambush on me, and I could not win that battle any way I played it.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, I also didn't perform the Rite of the War Master either. So all I had was, you know, the starting units, you know, spearmen, bleak swords, nothing special, and I couldn't do a damn thing to stop it.
Rite of the War Master, you mean like for Dark Conduit?
No, the Rite of the War Master is the one that
the Beast Army, yeah. I thought you meant like the I can't remember what it's called, but the one that gives you like slave bonuses, and then also the Dark Conduit ability.
Yeah, Sacrifice to Cain.
Yeah.
Dark Conduit being that amazing spell that basically causes one of your units to explode, but without damaging itself.
Yeah, it's like you just drop like a Lord Croak bomb on whatever you want to. It's so good.
Best way to take out storm vermin early on.
Yeah, Dark Conduit got me through like quite a few very outnumbered battles just because I was like, and say goodbye to your best infantry.
I would kind of set up my army formation to be kind of like a diamond.
Yeah.
So that way, like my my units up front would just get surrounded, and then boom, all gone.
Yeah, with Dark Conduit, you can honestly like just throw away a unit of Dread Spears, like get as much of their infantry on it as possible, and pop it off, and it'll take out pretty much everything around it.
And the cost is only their vigor. I mean, they still your units suffer nothing from the core from using
basically, yeah. I mean, it does have like a long recharge rate, but worth it.
Yeah, that was the problem. I found that in some battles, I'd never even had the opportunity to set it off the second time. You know, on those hard and fast ones.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever used all three constructively. Like 2 for sure. I think the third one I usually just throw it away on running units, but that's pretty much it.
I used all 3 on a siege where I had like just the garrison facing off against 2 Skaven armies.
Oh yeah.
I still lost it, but I got a valiant defeat.
But I took a lot of those rats with me.
I took the best units. You know, they sent the storm vermin over the walls first, and those are the first ones to go.
Yeah. Nice. So you lost Golden Tower, but you held like most of Kroq-Gar's territory?
Yeah, well, I had utterly taken out Kroq-Gar, but when those 3 armies came in, that was the only army I could afford in the Southlands because I had kept Haggrief.
Oh, right.
Some Beastmen, and I think one of the minor Dark Elf factions were putting on the pressure up there. And once I lost that, and the Clan Moors took the Golden Tower, they were easily going to take the Serpent, all the cities I had down there. And I was just like, all right, that campaign's done and over with in like 25 turns.
Yeah.
So what I learned from that was, at least in the Vortex campaign, I was like, I'm just going to sell Haggrief and focus entirely on the Southlands, because there's a lot of the cities that produce the scrolls down there, and it's all jungle. And I was like, I don't really need to. I just didn't want to fight that 2-front war. It made the turn times, like I've talked about before. I kept having to go back there and make sure everything was in order, which I did enjoy. But after 25 turns of that turning into nothing, I just didn't feel like doing that again.
Yeah. Mortal Empires wise, it's very different, I'll say. Like my first campaign was a lot more easygoing, if that makes sense. Like I was just kind of running around wrecking factions until the glitch, obviously.
Oh, really?
Like I wasn't too troubled. Like Eshin gave me a hard time because they were just hard to hold on to. Wasn't like I was losing a whole lot. I did pretty well against the dwarves. I actually think that's a pretty good matchup for the Dark Elves.
No, definitely.
With the amount of armor piercing, yeah. But I did find, like, after I was going to take out Kroq-Gar, the only way I could go basically was into the Edge of the World mountains and basically go full out war with Karazak-Karak, who was #1 power and held like everything north.
Of course, Karazak-Karak always ends up owning everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I confederated like all the dwarves on the map, and I was just like, okay, I am surrounded. There's a spot of yellow on the balance of power bar, but this is the only direction I have.
That's the one thing I like about the Vortex campaign is all the dwarves are just minor factions.
Yeah, like just based on where the game is right now, the order tide is like way too much. So it is kind of nice to get away from that, where Karazak just doesn't emerge as the most powerful faction after like turn 30.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one thing that's too dependable. I noticed in Mortal Empires is if you're playing as one of the chaotic factions, you just watch as the Empire and the dwarves just swallow up everything with almost no resistance.
And for the most part, Lewin the Encore like confederates all of Bretonnia, and they like all skip away into the sunset while you're like trying to take one city against them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense for Lewin Lonker. I can't pronounce the French names.
LL.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense for him to confederate, because I don't know what it is about the dwarves that irritates me so much, but it's like because the AI is aware of all the factions, even if maybe they never even came into contact with each other.
Mhm.
Like as soon as you start beating up a dwarf faction, they just confederate, and I find that very irritating.
Yeah. Well, and I do find like fighting the dwarves as well that the balance of power is very different from auto resolve to the actual battle. Like there was lots of times where it gave me like a 50% chance, like in this like 20 versus 20 stack against the dwarves, but I was like, oh, this is easy, and I end up taking it with like less than 100 losses. But the game just accounts for them being really, really strong.
I mean, they are really strong, but that's the problem with the the AI versus AI is if
Yeah.
they're putting that much value like they do on the bloated corpses. Like it's no wonder why.
Yeah.
It's no wonder why the results turn out the way they are.
Yeah. No, it's just so different from the actual battle, and it's pretty easy to deal with them as the dark elves, but you can't auto resolve very often.
No, that does at least fighting the Skaven until they get their late tier units. I mean, if you're just fighting Skaven slaves, you can usually auto resolve it and make up your losses with the slaves, so you can just kind of keep trucking along.
Yeah.
So since you did Mortal Empires, I'll just you can switch between whichever campaign you'd like to tell me about. But so you took on Clan Eshin because they were dealing with the orcs. I never fought any greenskins as the dark elves. How's that matchup go?
Pretty easy. Dark elves, like I find they do really well against low leadership factions. Like Skaven, greenskins, even like Bretonia is pretty easy because they, like I said, are very like quality, but you can kind of focus on one target, if that makes sense. Like you can hit them where it hurts.
Oh yeah, those dark shards. If you get 4 of those focusing in on one unit.
Yeah, and like dread spears to like even like savage orcs is pretty even. So you don't have to do a whole lot to the greenskins. They'll usually flee, and like you'll win when they have like 50% health. Like you just don't. The battles don't last very long, honestly.
Yeah, they just break and run too fast for you to really. I mean, seems like, yeah, the greenskins and the Skaven. Like I said, at least the big problem with the Skaven was even if you won, it wasn't even about winning that battle. It was just they're gonna fall back and get their units back, and it was like, how long can you pursue them without replenishment?
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, that like you just don't. It's hard to lose, I would say. Like if you just target high value against any of those factions, it's pretty easy to deal with them. Especially on like defensive battles when you're taking a city because they just lose their army.
Oh yeah, defensive battles against the greenskins, you mean?
Like if I was taking their city, like I don't have to go chase them down when they're like at 50% health across the board, because like they get wiped out, obviously.
Yeah, that is the one relieving thing about that.
Yeah. Like I didn't actually end up fighting them that much. It's just that they had taken some of the cities that Eshin had before, so it was just a matter of conquering them versus Eshin, which actually made the campaign move a lot faster because I was able to sort of secure that area and get out long before I did the first time.
Yeah, I that's kind of basically mirrors my campaign that I won on. Like I said, I made peace with Krokar. I got a non-aggression pact and eventually ended up in a military, or I think I just got a defensive alliance with him.
Okay.
But I had to bribe my way into that non-aggression pact. I had to pay him a few thousand.
Probably, yeah.
It just wasn't worth it at the time. I mean, I saw how divided I had become on my first campaign. And again, I was trying to play it safe, one enemy at a time.
Yeah.
And Clan Moors was already hooking around the south of the Southlands, and they put up the numbers. You'd take a city and wipe out an army or two, and they just kept coming. And then when you sent out the shipment of scrolls, they immediately got a boost of like 3 different armies that all had decent tier. lots of storm vermin, and that I got bogged down there until I think like turn 40 or 50 was just me taking maybe 2 provinces in the Southlands. Just it was I got into how we talked about battles that are not quest battles but feel like quest battles.
Yeah.
I got ambushed by 3 different Clan Moors armies again. Well, this time I want to back up. As I mentioned earlier, I used the right of the War Master to get an army of beasts,
Right.
and I got decked out. I got like 3 black dragons, a couple Scourge Runner chariots, a bunch of Dread Knights. No Medusas though in that one. I don't think I got a single one. But so I used some of those Scourge Runner chariots, some of the Dread Knights, and I kept 2 of the dragons. But I left everything else on the Black Arc, because the Black Arc is awesome for holding units, since it's like 50% off on its on upkeep on its.
Yeah, you can make it really cheap.
Yeah, I was doing this interesting thing where I was juggling units for a little while in the very beginning to try and min-max my profits.
Yeah.
And it does work. As long as nobody's coming at you, you can just onload them and offload them. Just even one turn of like that reduced upkeep, can be a couple thousand gold.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if it's the same in Vortex. I'd assume it would be as much, but Graef's sort of unique building does like 60% minus upkeep on all units in the territory.
Yes, it did do that. And that did make it feasible to maintain like a I want to say like an 8 stack up there to kind of hold down what you were taking.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but on my second time, I just wanted to focus on just down in the south and not have to constantly jump basically across the entire map.
Yeah. These are basically playing 2 campaigns at that point.
You are, and I did like it at first. I think it was I was salty because I lost, and I was just like, I'm not putting that much effort into it, at least not right off the bat.
Yeah, I tried so hard last time, and look where I
am. As like we're talking about edginess, I can think of a few Linkin Park songs that just ran through my head. I got ambushed by and it wasn't even like, it was that bullshit ambush. I set up an ambush that had a 95% success rating, but then it fails and I get ambushed by 3 different armies. So I'm not sure about the RNG there, but
seems like a bad roll. Yeah,
it was a bad roll. I'm used to getting bad rolls on ambushes though, especially on very hard or legendary. I swear it lies.
Yeah.
So those 3 different armies, they had the mortars, the poison wind mortars.
Okay, yeah.
They had rattling guns, they had Giselles. They brought some Deathglow bombardiers. They brought everything to that damn battle.
Max Skaven armies, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's when I lost almost all of my my Cold One Knights, the Dread Knights. I think I only kept like maybe a unit. I think only a unit of that survived. I lost one of my Scourge Runner chariot units. I lost almost everything in that fight. It was a Pyrrhic victory, but they had 1 settlement left, and I don't know where they were hiding those armies. I think they were fighting Krokar and just pulled them back to deal with me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very cool because, I had a bunch of different units at that point. I think, I had the 2 dragons that survived all the way through my campaign. They were putting in their work, but even they'll go down to sustained rattling gun and Giselle fire. So it was it was difficult to. I mean, it was everywhere. There was no way that was safe. I had the Dread Knights fighting in the forest, and there's like, the mortars of the poison landing all around them.
Yeah.
It was an intense fight that I fought on 2 fronts. I had the cavalry way off in the distance trying to take out what weapons teams I could, and basically just wasted I wouldn't say wasted their lives, but they gave up their lives taking out a couple weapons teams.
Yeah.
Those warp
Sacrifices
grinders.
here and there.
Yeah, they were losing to those warp grinders,
Mhm.
which I never seem to find as effective. Maybe because I'm just not using a bunch of them as like I never would. I usually
Yeah.
just keep them around just to drill through walls or as kind of a specialty unit. I never use them as like I don't know. I don't use them for fighting mainly.
I haven't figured out the trick with them either. The AI makes use of them way better than I do.
Yeah, they definitely do, and they were doing a lot of work against my knights and uh, all my witch elves. Because I fell in love with the witch elves on this campaign. They were
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
They're a lot of fun to use. But yeah, it was this big, this crazy battle of the three armies coming at once, and it, like I said, 50 turns in, and that's what it took me to basically take 2 provinces and take out Clan Moors. And I couldn't even move any further north because Krokar at that point had become a force to be reckoned with. He confederated tic-tac-toe, and he had basically taken over everything north of me. And that kind of closed out my first phase of my campaign. I had the southern tip of the Southlands, like the entire curve around it.
Right.
And I'll pick up from where I went to after you continue from tell me about fighting the dwarves. Like you said, it sounds like a very good matchup. But what about their artillery? Because I did not take artillery into any of the fights that I had.
Like early game, I don't usually bother with Reaper bolt throwers because it does require a level 3. So they're not super easy to get a hold of. What I found sort of early game to be really useful was the master heroes.
Did you use them as mainly agents or?
Early game, I use them like in the army because they can get a Dark Pegasus. So depending on like the army comp of the dwarves, they were able to sort of get behind enemy lines pretty quick, and they do pretty decent damage and super fast on the Pegasus. So that was kind of the artillery assassin, I guess.
Yeah, I tried to keep a theme with my first master and put him on a
Mhm.
cold one. My intent was to have him kind of be like a bodyguard to Malice.
Okay. Yeah.
But then I just ended up using him to destroy walls, and I learned the power of destroying walls on a settlement. It saves so much goddamn time.
Oh yeah. It's like, I don't even need to bring artillery because I can just pop this guy down.
Yeah, and having the 2 dragons, like those would always fly in just ahead to lay down some fire first, and not having to worry about artillery because the 2 dragons were more versatile than I think the Reaper bolt throwers would have ever been.
Oh yeah. I usually brought like Reaper bolt throwers in like my late game armies just because it's easier basically than like having a master follow everything. And for the most part, I wasn't taking that many walled cities with like a huge amount of. There wasn't a whole lot in my way.
I gotcha.
Yeah, the dwarves kind of when like Carrick Azul, when I started taking them, they kind of just retreated because there's a big space from where they sort of push into, which is like Darkhold, that little like section of mountains like just off the coast. And like their actual capital in the southern edge world mountains there is a little bit removed, so they kind of just retreat back into there. And then like heading in there, you actually really outclass because they have access to the underway and you don't. Actually, everything around there has access to the underway.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it wasn't a huge amount of effort in terms of the battles, just because shades do a really good job of taking out enemy infantry or their missiles. The only thing I really watched out for with those guys late game was like thunderers, and that was the big.
No, I imagine
yeah.
I imagine thunderers being a problem, just considering how much the dark elves rely on their armor. I feel like
executioners go down like nothing against those guys, so it's a kind of a high priority target.
So did you end up wiping? Well, no, you said they confederated with.
Yeah, they
Karazakrak.
confederated. Yeah.
Had you pushed them back to like their last settlement before they did that, or?
Yeah, they were literally on their capital. And I didn't feel like declaring war on Karazakrak right away because I'm a little bit of a baby, but I was just, no, can't do it.
There's nothing wrong with delaying that fight. I mean, especially if the big old orky buddy up there, if he's fighting him.
Yeah, actually, in my second one, it was kind of interesting because Black Crag had more of a presence. In the first one that I ended up losing, Black Crag was pretty much wiped out, which is why Karazakrak was so far south already. They lost some key battles, it looked like, so they had, like I said, it pretty much consolidated the entirety of that giant mountain range. Whereas in my second one, Black Crag was doing pretty well. Like Grimgor was still running around, taking settlements, and it was about dead even split, and Karazakrak hadn't come down that far south. So it was kind of Karak Azul and Black Crag sort of fighting it out, and I just kind of walked in and took advantage of the situation.
On the side of Black Crag, or no, you must have gone against Black Crag, because if
I didn't declare war on them right away because I was like, they actually have a decent amount of forces, and them using the underway and you not having a whole lot of movement range in there, as well as attrition being taken, and my already not great replenishment rate. I didn't declare war on them right away. I just kind of eradicated the dwarves in that area, and then I went for Krokgar down south.
And this definitely sounds a little different. See, on the Vortex campaign, I was never really outside the range of my black arcs.
Yeah,
I ended up with 2, and it sounds like in the Mortal Empires, it sounded like you left him behind, like you didn't have any support from the black.
It's not even like my choice. The thing about the black arcs in like the one you start with is that it's trapped. It's in that sea, and it can't get out into the main one.
You're right. That's so bullshit.
Yeah, I literally had to like start a stupid battle with him, get him wounded, so I could move him out because there's no way to get it out. And so I have this like decent black arc that I just can't make use of because nothing is super close to the coast here anymore. And yeah, like it's just sitting there essentially.
And you can't disband it?
Sometimes the game's kind of weird about it because the admirals all count as like legendary lords, like they're immortal right as soon as you get them. So sometimes it's like, oh, you can't disband legendary lords. Okay,
that's right, they are immortal. I forgot about that. Sometimes
it let me do it like a couple times, but other times it didn't. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it might have been something I didn't understand too, but the game didn't want me to most of the time.
Nah, that's unfortunate because that sounds very gamey. I mean, I guess it's just a limitation of how the map is set up, where at least on the Vortex campaign, the map goes way far, or at least significantly further south than the Mortal Empires is able to.
Right. Yeah, it all joins up eventually anyway in Vortex, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, you're really at like the southern point of the Southlands. There's like a little island called the Fortress of Dawn that has another high elf faction that's just it's just kind of floating out there. That was kind of interesting because I never even realized that existed, and all of a sudden I was getting invaded by the high elves again, and I'm like, who the hell are these guys?
Hello.
And then you can kind of see it in the fog of war, and I'm like, I was like, interesting place to put a spice market, because that's what their export was. But it's one of those one city settlements, so you can't get a lot of growth out of it, but it is very secure.
One city like province?
Yeah, it's a one city province.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so basically,
I kind of vaguely remember it, but not so much.
Yeah, it's away from everything.
Right.
It's very far south, but still jungle, fortunately. But that was the good thing about the Vortex campaign. I guess that probably would have frustrated me, not being able to take my Black Arc with me and have to, purposely get him wounded just so I could relocate him, because that makes sense.
And it is useful. Like I ended up going through like the mountains kind of lead into like the desert where Libaris is, like Queen Kalita.
Mm-hmm.
So on the way to fight Krokkar, I ended up just kind of razing all her settlements because I wasn't going to conquer it, and I didn't want someone who was already not super happy with me living there. Especially because I was like, I held, and the second one had Graef, so I was like, okay, I don't want to come back here. So I just raised it because it's not worth it to take 3 provinces that is all red. Like the public order and minuses to income is just not worth it.
Yeah, I don't even know how long it takes to even build like, a main settlement building when it's red like that. Because on yellow, it already takes, 5 turns or 6 turns just to build like the level 2 settlement.
Yeah. Like you get nothing done. And I could have taken it technically for the accomplishment of getting 8 or is it 10? 8 or 10 total provinces to get the elixir recipe, but it just would have costed way too much for the point I was at.
Especially if you can hold it. I mean, because those places are going to be rebelling, and
exactly.
You got to afford all those public order buildings and the growth buildings, and
I think army to watch out for it.
Yeah, you're definitely better off just burning it down as you pass through.
Basically,
it's the Malice way.
That's pretty accurate. But yeah, from there I kind of went and took out Krokkar, which wasn't too much of an issue.
No, he's not much of a fight, really.
Yeah, like it's so weird, like doing well against them after last time with the Empire troops. But like mid game Lizardmen versus like mid game Dark Elves is very workable. Like it's not easy, I wouldn't say, but it's close. Like it's very manageable. Just because you have such missile superiority, because the Lizardmen are pretty lacking in that department. And if they don't have access to like mass Stegodons or like they're not able to like spam ancient salamanders or anything like that yet, then you're doing okay.
Even if they do, because I launched a war on Krokkar about my mid game as well. I found even with armies of those, as long as it's not the Ark of the Gods, you remember?
Oh, the Engine of the Gods Stegodons?
And yeah, they never had the Engine of the Gods, but they did have Stegonons, Carnosaurs and stuff like that. But having just a solid front line of spearmen, just enough to hold some dark shards and then Medusas, and having a black arc to lay some support. I mean, like I said, 4 Medusas and some dark shards will take down, you just focus fire one at a time and they go down fast. Or if they don't go down, they start running.
Yeah, and Dread Spears are honestly like a good tier 1 infantry. They'll hold pretty far into the campaign.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I always kept at least 4 of them, and even in my late game army, just to hold there, just for a few minutes.
Yeah, like I did eventually make the switch to Blackguard, but Dread Spears are a really solid unit.
I never even made the switch to Blackguard. I think it was because I fought the Skaven so damn much in the Vortex campaign. I was either fighting Skaven or I was fighting Dark Elves, and then I fought the Lizardmen a little bit.
And that was pretty much it for like the entirety of your campaign.
Well, yeah, I imagine my campaign was much shorter than yours. What turn did you sort of end on when you got the potion formula?
The second one, actually, I wouldn't even call it finished right now. It's at turn 180, almost 190, I think. I actually I played it pretty much until we started talking because I was having a lot of fun with it. I want to bring up actually like Malice's long campaign victory because I think it's really cool.
Tell me about it.
Based on his sort of backstory. At first, when I saw it, I was like, "That is ridiculous. This is going to take so long." But basically, like it's a little bit different. Like there's obviously the objective where you have to capture so many provinces and get the elixir recipe, but you have to destroy some pretty interesting factions. I'm just going to read them off. It's Clan Eshin. You have to destroy Black Crag as well as Karak Azul, which is like fairly straightforward. They're around you and aren't going to agree with you. So those three are pretty obvious. But then it's Last Defenders, Reichland, Clan Pestilence, Kreza Karak, Lothern, and Hexawaddle.
It's all over the place.
It's literally all over the place. It's like southwest Lustrian jungle. It's like northwest Lustrian jungle, all of Ulthuan, and probably part of Lustria, because Lothern always confederates the Lore Masters. And then like the Empire, like the entirety of the Empire. Because by the time you get to them, it's like they've confederated everything anyway. And then the entire, like basically, to get a long campaign victory, you have to take probably 60% of the map.
Like pretty much everything except for Malekith's territory, basically.
Yeah, and like Norska.
Yeah, Norska.
Which you can go for technically.
Oh yeah.
And then like it's a little bit differently, or a little bit different in terms of the cities you have to take, but based on destroying those factions, it's like the only campaign I've seen where I'm like, you know what, I could actually see myself having those cities, because I have to get there at some point anyway.
No, I wouldn't mind doing a Mortal. I actually did start a Mortal Empires campaign on Legendary for like I was saying earlier, I can never remember whenever we're talking the hag. What's her name?
Crone Hellbrand.
Crone Hellburn. Yeah. I started a Legendary. Hellebron. Yeah. I'm down to 2 settlements, or I think I got 3 settlements.
Yeah.
But I'm still going. I'm still hanging in there. So after, damn. So okay. So you said you went to war with Black Crag, right? Or did you?
Well, yeah.
You went to war with Khalida, I should say.
Kind of like I said, it wasn't much of a fight. I just kind of like raised them on the way, went down and fought Krokkar and dealt with that little section, which is a little bit much, just because they have that, like, it's sort of like a V shape, and you got to go like all the way in, all the way back. So it helps if you bring a Black Arc down the coast and sort of invade from there, because there's no like coastal cities. They're all inland, so you can't take any without like making it clear you're invading.
Did you bump into Clan Moors at all?
No, I didn't actually. The like sort of valley that leads from there out into like the main like desert towards Khemri and everything out there was actually ruins when I first got there, and not like Moors infested ruins, because that would be a little bit different. But it was just ruins, like someone had just raised it. Eventually, like Cetra came in and took parts of that, and I wasn't pushing out that way. But I ended up like leaving an army sort of in that valley to take out the Arachnos orcs, which usually die. Like the greenskin faction usually gets wiped out there. They had like one city left that I took out there, so I held part of that. But after that, I actually was mostly focused on like my Hague Graef goals at that point.
It sounds like Clan Moors didn't even really get started, if that was the situation you came into.
No, honestly, like the 3 sort of Skaven clans that you can run into pretty easily in Mortal Empires, like Eshin Moors and Clan Rictus, which is just south of Hague Graef. None of them did very well.
That's fortunate.
I mean, like it gave me a break from Skaven fights, which is nice.
Yeah, like I said, our first campaign with Marcus, I got sick of fighting Lizardmen, and this time I was done with fighting Skaven by the end of it. That's
usually how Vortex campaigns go. Stop fighting me, unknown Skaven clan.
Balls deep in Skaven. They were just coming from all. They were sailing across the ocean in both campaigns just to come and get a piece of me. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'll jump back to my campaign real quick because yours
Yeah.
is definitely going to go a lot further. 'cause,
We're like halfway through mine, and you're like, "Yep, I fought a lot of escaping."
yeah, 101. I beat the time for my Marcus Wolfheart campaign by I think like 10 turns, but
Yeah, that's usually about like a vortex line, 100.
yeah, I like it. It was doable. You know,
Yeah, they're satisfying.
yeah, in one day. I did it in one day.
Yeah.
So at least the successful campaign.
Yeah.
So anyway, after I took the south of the Southlands, which includes the provinces of the Jungle of the Gods, the
Mhm.
Southern Jungles, lots of southern places, and the little island that looks like it could be Atlantis, Fortress of Dawn. I decided to move over into the New World because I didn't get enough of that the first time.
Yeah.
I was looking for places that produced the scrolls because that was what my main quest was,
Right.
and that brought me into connection with Kalita again. And I should have known better from from the Marcus campaign.
Should have known.
I should have known, man. But Kalita offered me trade agreements, and even though she was at war with the Blessed Dread, I was like, you want to be friends again? Maybe it'll last a bit longer.
Mhm.
So I made friends with her pretty quickly, and that pissed off the Blessed Dread, and
Yeah.
they owned a significant part of the southeast part of the New World.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they're a bit bigger. I usually, at least usually when I play Mortal Empires, I that's when I'm in the New World, not really in the Vortex, and
Yeah.
I never really see them get anywhere. Honestly, they usually just get wiped out pretty quickly.
Yeah, Lokir's got a lot of enemies.
Yeah, so he established, a little bit of an empire. He had actually aligned with Clan Pestilence, which I've never friggin' seen.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, him and Clan Pestilence were doing some work against Kalita. Kalita didn't last long, but I don't know if you're familiar with the settlement Altar of the Horned Rat.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sort of
I
post there.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a major settlement. It's got the scrolls that I needed. It's kind of just southwest of those two islands on the Vortex campaign where
Yeah.
Clan Scryer starts out.
Right.
So I sailed my little, my little Black Ark and my Malice army over to the New World, and I landed there once I saw that the scrolls are there, and that put me at war with Clan Pestilence, and then because I went to war with them, the Blessed Dread declared war on me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and as well as Clan Scryer. That's about the time when I could afford. I think I had two big armies. Like I left one back, sort of at my original colonies that I was starting to build up.
Yeah.
And I created a second one to help me hold the Altar of the Horned Rat while I went and conquered Clan Scryer's starting territories.
Yeah.
But that was basically my last big push was colonizing, the New World, south of the Blood Swamps. I never ran into the Vampire Coast. They exist, and it looks like they hold quite a bit of territory from what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I raided them a fair bit, but they never declared war on me. They just kept demanding money from me that I was
Classic.
taking. Yeah.
Thanks, Luther.
But I got into this. Oh my god, I'm seeing it right now. Clan Pestilence started. They set me back. They probably kept me back for probably like 20 turns, because they sent one of their plague rats and spread the plague to my colonies up there,
Classic. Yeah.
and it infected every goddamn settlement up there.
Yeah.
And once you get that, you're kind of stuck in a holding pattern
Yep.
because everybody's suffering attrition. You're not getting any growth. You're even if you have a garrison, it's just losing units left and right, and you just have to defend what you have. And I was probably stuck like that from turn maybe like 55 to probably 70, just holding on to a couple of settlements up there while I was constantly being assaulted by Clan Pestilence and the Blessed Dread.
Plus, you're probably trying to keep Malice's possession down so you can get a little bit of replenishment here and there?
Yeah, I kept him out of the main cities because every city got infected by the end, and I just kept him out of them. Trying to. Fortunately, I think the Black Arcs are immune to it, because since the major settlement, the Altar of the Horned Rat, was right on the ocean, and the Blessed Dread likes to go all navy on you.
It is kind of his focus, yeah.
Yeah, I kept my Black Arc just parked in there with a full 20 stack because it was fully upgraded.
Okay.
Yeah, and
so it costed like nothing.
Yeah, fully upgraded. It's negative 60%, and also by that time I had leveled them up to have further reduced upkeep, so it was basically free.
Yeah.
So I kept him parked in there, and he never caught the plague. So I think Black Arcs are immune to it, fortunately, even though that's how plagues historically get spread. Maybe he was just a clean freak. I don't know.
He's just disinfecting every piece of the Black Arc.
Admiral Leech, he's he's a slaver. He's a terrible human being, but very clean. Very clean.
Most people don't know this. He is a germaphobe.
Yeah, he was a germaphobe. The one good thing about him. But that was probably. Oh, I think about this time was when I got into the quest battle for the Warp Sword of Cain. So I went.
Okay, yeah.
So that involves going to. I just teleported over there because it was back.
Yeah.
In the Vortex campaign, it was back basically where I started. You have to fight Solek or Kolek, the Sun Eater.
Mm-hmm.
And
big old Shaggoth.
Yeah, the big old Shaggoth. And that was a close battle.
Yeah.
I mean, it said reinforcements are expected, and I didn't expect as many as that came because it spaces it out in just such a bastardly way.
Yeah.
And, did you have any trouble with it?
What happened actually the first time I tried it, I got crumped because I was like, oh, reinforcements expected. Like, usually I take that with a grain of salt because like going up against like Skaven when it says like that, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
With that one, I got wrecked because I didn't even have like a full 20 stack, and I was like, oh, I'll just go get like Malice's quest item, like don't even worry about it. And I got folded, so I was just like, okay, we're gonna wait a little bit. And then the second time I tried it, I had like a full 20 stack, and at that point, like I really waited because I was like, I need good troops. So I had like leveled up Blackguard and Shades and basically like my end game sort of army composition. So I actually pretty much just went through the initial sort of altercation with the bunch of dragon ogres and some, I think it's just chosen there.
Yeah, it kind of sets you up with Kolek comes at you from the front with a bunch of chosen warriors.
Yeah.
And as you think, I sent Malice in, and of course I was dumb enough to not have him fully possessed. I think I actually had him sort of under control, so everybody was doing a little less damage than they should have been doing.
Oh, yeah.
So I sent Malice straight in there, and Kolek just started chewing through him. Like,
yep.
Every hit was probably because he was on spite as well, so it didn't help that Kolek is anti-large. Damn.
And Malice is not.
Yeah, Malice technically counts as large, but he's not. And I dedicated everybody to those chosen, and then just when you think that's the worst of it, the Shaggoths and what are they? The mini Shaggoths or Dragon Ogre Shaggoths? Yeah, at least one Dragon Ogre Shaggoth comes in, and a bunch of the little ones come in from the side.
Yeah,
and that's where I lost like the rest of my Dread Knights because I was just like, shit, send them all over there.
Yeah, I kind of lined it up like the second time I did it well enough that I knew they were coming. So I was like, okay, we're gonna put some nice anti-large over here. The executioners will take on the chosen, and then by the time like the manticores come in, I don't know if anything comes after that, but the manticores literally didn't even get to me because the rest of their army was fleeing, and so the game's like, if the manticores don't land, you win. And I didn't land, so I just won.
Yeah, I actually got lucky like that too. I think one briefly got I think it had the sorcerer on it, or it had somebody on it. It wasn't just the
Yeah.
regular Manticore, and I just took him out right away. I I got the archers to focus fire on him, and
Yeah.
like you said, by that time everybody Kolick was dead, and Malice had I couldn't even see his health bar anymore.
Yeah, it's got like 98 health.
Yeah, and by the skin of his teeth, he was still alive, and that's when they broke. And it didn't even really feel like a victory. I just felt like an idiot because I'd so mismanaged that battle.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I came through at the end, and it it was it's one of those battles that was very fast. It seemed like there wasn't much waiting around because Kolek just comes straight at you.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of like just like Chaos's sort of shtick. Like they are a rush faction. Like they need to get in there and start the fight. Otherwise, they lose because they have no missiles. But yeah, it's. I think that's just mostly the way that Chaos plays, especially with a bunch of dragon ogres.
Yeah, I again, it's one of those situations when I play as Chaos, I never feel like my army's that strong. But yeah, the Chaos Warriors definitely put up a solid fight, especially if you don't have the executioners on your side and just get a bunch of spearmen. Uh, but yeah, it was a tough fight. But you get the Warp Sword of Cain, which I think gives you regeneration, gives you some damage resist, huge ambush defense chance, which I didn't realize. Plus 40% ambush defense chance, which is that's something.
Yeah, it's pretty much invulnerability to ambushes on top of your already like base.
You say that, but then I got ambushed. Well,
hey, we're not talking about your bad RNG roll here.
Well, I had another bad RNG roll, but it actually worked out. Remember how we were talking about I had an sort of an error or a glitch that occurred in my favor?
Yeah.
So I got ambushed by Clan Pestilence towards the very end as I was making a push for one of their they still have some settlements left, but they're losing now. I got ambushed by two of their armies and the Blessed Dread, which I've never seen a combination of Clan Pestilence and the Blessed Dread fighting on the same side.
It sounds like so much fun, though.
Dude, it was, but not for the reason you think. So as soon as I got ambushed, you know how the AI sometimes makes that choice where it wants to gather together its army before it comes for you and just doesn't make a rush for you. So I made a beeline to corner camp. And when I did, I had I had one Scourge Runner chariot as well as the Regiment of Renown one, which I think is, it's even better. I think it does more damage to anti-large.
It does magical damage, yeah.
Magical damage, yeah. So I'm sitting there, and I'm seeing no movement. I see some of Clan Pestilence units run into this big tree line that took up like half the map. And nothing happens for like 10 minutes, and I've got the timer on for 60 minutes, but I can see the Hydra and the Manticore that's like just standing right next to each other in the forest, not moving.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I dropped like a zap or two from my Black Arc onto them, and finally they start moving. And the entire Blessed Dread's army comes out in one big clump, right? I mean, all of their units just stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
And I had a mage that I got from the very beginning that was a shadow mage. And that vortex spell, the Pit of Shades.
Pit of Shades.
I timed an what is it?
Overcasted?
Overcast. I was gonna say overdrive. Overcasted Pit of Shades, dead in the center of that thing, and then I let that black arc go loose on everything, and I took out probably a half of their army in that bombardment, and then once that finished, they stayed clumped up and
Mhm.
kept moving towards me in this big blob. And I did it to them a second time.
Yeah.
And I got their entire army to break. And it was then and only then that the two Clan Pestilence armies came at me. So I basically didn't have to fight one of the armies, like the whole Dark Elf army that came at me. I just wiped it out in, a couple minutes.
Right.
And I don't know what the AI was doing, but thank God it did, because there was it felt cheap, and I honestly probably should have reloaded it, because it was not what it was, intending to do.
Right.
And I kind of missed out on, like I said, like you said, like I didn't really get the Clan Pestilence Blessed Dread thing going on, because Lokir went full retard and decided the slow moving blob
Yeah.
was the
was
way
the
to
best.
go.
Yeah. Just imagine him like seeing the Pit of Shades going and just being like, shit, keep going, guys.
This is all according to plan. It was beautiful though, that mage had over 1,000 kills.
Damn.
It was
That's
awesome.
actually kind of brings up something I wanted to talk about. What do you usually like? What did you find yourself sort of running sorcerer wise for Dark Elves?
Well, look, when I do those rites, and I take what I get, and I got a Shadow Mage.
Okay.
And I used her debuffs are really good. I didn't use usually. I feel like when I was a scrub, I went with a penumbral pendulum.
Pendulum, yeah.
The penumbral pendulum. But instead I went with enfeebling foe and the withering, and those are great debuffs. You can cast them in an area or on a specific enemy.
Yep.
And then the Pit of Shades was just awesome, because who doesn't love a vortex spell that actually sits in one place and doesn't just go. I actually
can be casted on walls.
it can be casted vaguely on walls. And I found I actually like it better than the Fire Mage's vortex spell, just because sometimes it goes exactly where you want it to go and it does crazy amounts of damage, but then other times you'll drop it and it just decides to just take a walk out into the countryside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I found playing a Malekith campaign before we even started this whole podcast. I usually ran like fire mages, sometimes like death for chill wind and
Lord sniping.
yeah, like blade wind is okay, like basically Malekith.
Yeah, blade wind is
magic.
okay.
Yeah, it's good, but I really went hard in the shadow mages this time, because I was just like, Pit of Shades is the spell. It's so good.
I mean, Pit of Shades is really good. I've heard actually Legend of Total War talk shit about Pit of Shades. I think I did. Somebody talked shit who's a big YouTuber about the Pit of Shades, and I'm like, this thing it's a nuke if you just wait for the right moment.
Yeah, like it's probably more situational, which is fair, but and it is harder to time just because it doesn't move and it's like one area, and if you screw up, you just got like a random hole to the chaos waste for nothing. But like done right, it's better than most vortex spells for me. Maybe it's just like the way I play Magic, but I really enjoyed using it.
No, yeah, that's the thing. I would rely on the withering and enfeebling foe to debuff. Like I would wait to use the Pit of Shades.
Yeah.
Like otherwise, my Shadow Mage would strictly debuff the enemy, because especially stripping away like their armor and leadership. And then when the right moment came, Pit of Shades, and that was the great finisher right there.
Yeah. Did you mostly use Beastmasters, or did you use sort of like a mix?
I did smarten up. Originally, I was going with sorcerers. You're talking about the lords, right?
Yeah, the lords. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I started off using a sorceress, and then I was like, you know what? This guy, the Beastmasters are definitely leaning into. I think. Let me make this more coherent. I had the right of the War Master, come back because you have to wait 50 turns,
right?
And or 30, 50 turns, and I was like, okay, what if I make a Beastmaster? Because I know that's what they're geared towards. And then I activate that right, and I just kind of, throw all the beasts into his army.
Right.
And the Beastmaster is the one I've got. I've got a couple dragons on him. I've got the I can't pronounce it. It's not
Carabidus?
the Carabidus,
Yeah.
which is anti-large. It's called a monster killer. And it was amazing against Krokar. I would just throw it up against anything he had, and nothing they could do.
Yeah,
and then
a bunch sucks the face off a Carnosaur.
Yeah, it does. It's a beautiful thing, and a bunch of Bloodrack Medusas, and all the buffs he gives to like you're just reducing reload time up to like almost 25% for those Bloodrack Medusas if you spec him right. And it was just he was the perfect army that I left back in the Southlands to start conquering the last defenders once I decided to stop raiding him and actually declare war on him.
Right.
Did you use the Beastmasters at all?
Not really. Like my second campaign, just because I held on to Head Graef, I never had 12 grand sitting around until like I had basically late game army compositions. So I really wanted at some point to like use that right and like throw a leveled up Beastmaster on it, but for the most part I usually go Dreadlords just because free Black Dragon.
Oh, there's a free Black Dragon with them?
Yeah, like sorcerers or
Dreadlords.
Yeah, exactly. They get a Black Dragon level like 18 or something like that.
Yeah, Malice is just on his little raptor. Not as impressive.
I mean, yeah, like to be fair, Malekith is just so much of a beast for the Dark Elves that it's hard to like compare because he's a sorcerer, he's a great melee lord, and he's
yeah, he's the big boss of the enemy factions, I guess.
Yeah, so it is kind of not the same thing. Like Malice is not as good all around, but different.
I mean, being Malice, I definitely liked, like I said, I never really liked the Dark Elves before this, but I've come to, maybe it's, getting comfortable with their units and exactly, a lot of it comes from understanding the slave economy, how to use the Black Arcs effectively.
Yeah.
And when you're just coming into using all these systems just from a regular order faction, it's not confusing, but you just kind of forget about the different things you need to take into account.
Yeah. It's like a spin off of like a vanilla sort of faction. Like it's a spin off the High Elves essentially. The High Elves are basically like the base faction of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just get a couple extra mechanics that you kind of have to watch, but can be a boon for you if you know how to use it. But it's a little bit more intensive to pay attention to.
And I definitely liked because being the Dark Elves actually gave me an incentive to sack cities more often. Because sometimes I would just go and I needed slaves, so I just see a city that was undefended, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go sack it. I don't want to occupy it. I'm just gonna take some cash and some people.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's part of your economy essentially.
Yeah, I'm looking at my final turn here, and I mean, granted, I'm only 101 and you're 180, but I got like 18,000 slaves right now, give or take.
Yeah, and it's like just all loaded into one province.
Oh yeah, well this time I actually have them, I think, into like two provinces because as you expand, you can afford to. I definitely wanted them in my gold producing province because yeah, I'm not sure how much that increased the output, but I'm sure it helped.
A little bit of extra money there. So when you did the final shipment to Malekith, that's pretty much where you were, was in Lustria?
Yeah, I was in Lustria. I was beating back Clan Pestilence. Clan Pestilence was a lot easier than the Blessed Dread. For sure. Not to say they didn't give me some trouble when they started bringing tons of mortars. and Deathclaw bombardiers, and
Yeah.
if you ran into too many of those, it was definitely shredding a lot of my larger units as they're meant to.
Right.
But that's what I was relying on. So it was kind of, they were bringing a good counter as well as those rattling guns. But with lightning strike, and as long as I was not getting ambushed, I could deal with them just fine. It was just that they would wait for that perfect opportunity to throw like 2 or 3 armies at me to where I couldn't use lightning strike, and that's what they seem to consistently wait for.
Yeah, put you on the defensive so that you can't strike back. Or like stop them from reinforcing.
Yeah, because any one army of Skaven, you can, especially if you got like a good mid to late game army, really can't stand up to you. But if you get two or three of them against one army, maybe even outside your black arc range, you're starting to be in some dicey territory.
Yeah, exactly. Numbers are just too much.
So did you you're asking me about the mage earlier. Did you rely on the shadows or fire mage, or
it kind of depended on what I wanted, because with like fire mages I usually go with like heavy infantry, just because burning head is so good.
Love burning head.
Yeah, like it's really good against armored units. So like infantry on infantry, you get them in a line and you just toss a overcasted burning head down their sort of line, and then like piercing bolts is good, flamestorm is good. You've got some buffs, but they're kind of a waste of wins in my opinion. So like 3 really solid spells for sure is what I went with, like infantry heavy. But I found myself going more and more towards shadow mages, just because I haven't explored it as much as fire mages, because I just go for that like in every sort of faction. Like Lizardmen, I'm like, let's get a fire slam because I know that one.
No, you're absolutely right. That's kind of why I was like, I like that when you did that right, that gets you let me just get the name of it really quick. The gift to the Witch King.
Yeah.
You need that, you need a magic caster. And I've been trying to roll with whatever it gives me. Because I know there's some other factions where, sometimes you just, a mage arrives and now they're in your army. And you got to kind of just having that mage is better than not having it.
Right.
And like you said, I always lean towards fire mage because it's very straightforward. Use it entirely offensively on the offense.
Yeah.
And but when I got the shadow mage, I spent a good amount of time just kind of reading over, the different spells, and what I actually came up with a build for the shadow mage before I even started leveling her up. And
okay.
And it makes me curious to I actually, on my Beastmaster, I picked a beast mage to go with him, and to try and kind of to try and go with a theme. So I was even experimenting with the beast magic as well on making my beasts even more beastly. But I definitely realized that there's, from the shadow magic, that there's probably more combinations that I'm not even really giving any consideration that are still viable, or it makes me curious to try out the different lores of magic, because then when they're not as straightforward as send giant screaming fireball across the map, some of them are a little bit more complicated. Like it's not obvious what you should pick before you get to the Pit of Shades in the shadow magic,
right?
And that penumbral pendulum is not anywhere as good as the flaming skull.
No, it's not.
It's not okay. It barely okay. You're much better, in my opinion, going with the debuffs that you can get, but then go straight for Pit of Shades.
Like I used shadows a lot, fire a lot, death. When I got it, like I did get a sorcerer or 2 from Gift for the Witch King, and I was like, okay, that's not bad. I never used Lore of the Beast because I think it's not great. Like it's debuffs and a mana core summon essentially.
On the in the Beastmen, I feel like it's got some better spells, honestly.
Yeah.
I know there's a variation of what you can get.
And maybe with like a Beastmaster Lord, it would be worth it. But yeah, like Beast Magic, and I don't love lore of Dark either.
Yeah, that's something I gotta check out because I feel like I'm on the same page as you. I know I avoid it, but I don't know exactly why. One good thing about the beast magic, I just want to throw it out there because I was trying to. She's got this spell called Pan's Impenetrable Pelt, and
Yep.
you know she's got Flock of Doom, which is okay. It's good against Skaven. I will say it's great against clumps of Skaven.
Yeah, it'll do decent damage against no armor troops.
Yep, no armor troops. It does work, but the Pan's Impenetrable Pelt, if you drop that, you can cast it on the ground. If you cast that on some of your bigger, creatures, it's a fair amount of speed and physical resistance. So I think it's worth it. Like I think it was a good play as far as my beast heavy, because if two dragons and the Carbidus are fighting against an army of dinos, and you cast that on them, I remember them just tearing through.
It tilts the scales a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go on the record and say Beast Magic is a bit underrated, but I'm probably in multiplayer it's probably shit. But
I think it gets used a lot because the mana core summon.
I don't even really. I'm not a big fan of mana cores. Whenever I got the mana cores in from that right, I honestly just got rid of them.
Yeah, like they're pretty squishy. Like
Very
I don't
squishy.
And the rampage sucks.
Yeah, it's like, especially when I was getting black dragons, it was like, what's the point of a mana core?
Yeah, no, there isn't really. If you can get dragons, for sure.
It's like, yeah, they're more expensive, but they're worth it.
Yeah. Well, that was my other thing too with not using Beastmasters is their end level mount is a mana core, and I don't care for them. So like Black Dragon's always gonna win.
Well, still, the Beastmaster has tons of buffs to the Black Dragons, even if he doesn't have them himself.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah. I wish the Beastmaster like heroes had a little bit more to do with the.
They don't really.
Yeah, they're just like an anti-large hero essentially.
I mean, to me, he was just an agent. I tried figuring out in 3 different campaigns. I tried figuring out a viable way to use him, and in the early game, I just kept him in the fight to level him up fast. And then as soon as I won those first 3 islands, I just sent him to explore ruins and to look for undercities in the other ruins.
Yeah.
Just because I just wanted him to be able to destroy walls and use him as a scout, basically.
Yeah, like I don't know. I can't remember the name of them. The Hags. Wow.
The Death Hags?
Yes, thank you. Are like really good anti-infantry units. Like good, like Cainite assassins are really good. Lord assassins, like they'll take out high priority targets, and the Beastmasters just kind of like there. It'd be better if he had like
a good mount.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Dark Pegasus being his like end game just makes him super fast, but it doesn't complement his low health and anti-large tendencies.
No, I looked at that because I was like, oh, you could probably put this guy on a dragon, right? And then I saw the Pegasus, and I was like, are you kidding me?
Nope. No, you cannot. If you want a Lord Sniper, get an assassin. If you want someone to deal with infantry, get a Death Hag.
I mean, I didn't realize. Where is my Beastmaster? I can't find him on the map.
Where is
he? Does he have an emo haircut? Is that why he wants to ride a Dark Pegasus? But I didn't let him. I just gave him the
cold one.
He's got a ponytail and lots of earrings. He looks like he'd work at Hot Topic. But I refuse to give him that Pegasus. He's just get his own cold one.
I don't like you enough to give you a cool map.
No, well, I want to give him a dragon, but it's like he's supposed to be a beastmaster, and all he gets
Yeah.
is a freaking Pegasus or whatever. Maybe there's a way that makes sense, but I couldn't do it. I didn't even want to do it. I used him as an agent, like I said.
It's useless. On the topic of the gift for the Witch King, though, how did Malekith do in your campaign?
Oh man, he's on a roll, man. He's invading old.
Okay.
Yeah, I could have confederated again the hag
Hellebrand.
Hellebron.
There we go.
Like I said, I got 4 hours to sleep today. Not all in one go.
I'm here for you.
I was playing her for like 6 hours today.
Oh yeah.
On legendary, so I should know her. But so I could have confederated Hellebrand, but I was like, you know what? I just don't want another empire to manage.
Yeah.
So Malekith eventually confederated with her. So he's got everything in the north. There's no barbarian tribes left, west to east, all up in the north. He's got it. He moved down south, took out Alithanar, took out clan is it Rictus?
Yeah.
Rictus, yeah. Took out clan Rictus. We're all at war with his mother, Marathi.
Yep.
As is usual in my campaigns, we're at war with her. Fortunately, I didn't have to fight her. But he is invading Ulthuan right now. He's got he doesn't have the Sword of Cain. I think Alariel has it.
Oh, okay.
But he's got numerous landings. He's like on the north, and he just moved around to the east, and yeah, he's taking a good chunk of it. Yeah, if I continued on this campaign, I could see him. I would probably. I don't know if I could help him because I'm so busy in the New World and the Southlands, but I think he would just take it on his own.
Yeah, he's just going for it.
Yeah.
Because in my first one, Gift for the Witch King was basically garbage because Malekith was having trouble with, what is it, clan? The NPC Skaven up there. It's not Rictus, but it's the one he spawns. Fester, I think.
Fester, yeah.
So he was having trouble with that, and I just kind of watched him like slowly get beat up by the Skaven.
By clan Fester.
Yeah, exactly. Like he didn't do a whole lot and ended up with like 3 territories. So I was like, this is useless. I can recruit stuff at like way higher level already. And then in my second one, my like current one, I guess, he did pretty well, but with some help from me, if that makes sense. Like he was kind of doing the same thing, doing a little bit better, but with that little Norskin Hmong up there.
Yeah.
So I went and like kind of like pushed them away, like dealt some damage so that Malekith could like sort of go up there. And now he's confederated Hellebrand and actually Marathi as well.
Oh wow!
And like at turn 190, whatever I'm at, he's taken most of Ulthuan and has like that whole northern section.
Yeah.
And the only reason he doesn't have like all the way down into like where Alithanar is because Hexawaddle has pushed all the way up there.
Yeah, Hexawaddle's gonna. If I went north, I'd probably bump into them. I can't tell how much they've taken, but they took out the Hunts Marshals expedition. I remember. I saw that. Yeah, they
saw it go down.
Well, it was like turn 80, and all of a sudden it said they were defeated. I was like, oh wow, they're still around.
F's in the chat for Marcus.
And the Exiles of Nehek are actually doing. They've got actually not doing too bad. Marathi's kind of squished in between Naggaroth and the Exiles. Surprisingly, there's tons of ruins still left unclaimed by everybody.
This campaign just reiterated for me that Grand Hierophant Katep is the saddest character in Warhammer 2.
He is so sad.
He's so sad. I feel bad for him. He just wants a friend. Like every campaign I play, he's like, "Hey,
hey, you want to hang out?"
He's like, "Yo, what up?" I'm like,
we get some cool stuff over here. Like skeletal vultures and
Yeah,
whatnot. I don't know.
we have Necrosphinx.
Yeah, we got one of those.
Yeah. And like I'd honestly be fine with it if he kept to that little like desert province that runs alongside sort of the western area where you kind of like below Graef basically.
Yep.
I'd be fine if he kept there, but he's just like he pushed out into there. Malekith declared war on him, and I was like, sorry, buddy. But he came back at one point. He got revived somehow, mostly probably because I raised like those desert cities because I didn't want anything in there and I didn't want to take care of them. So I think at some point he was just like, I'm back.
Yeah, he just went into hiding for a little while.
Yeah, poor guy.
So that pretty much brings me to, like I said, the Vortex campaign for this. I was thinking about how to describe it, and it was pretty straightforward. I jumped from the Southlands over to Lustria and kind of ended there. And we can talk about the final quest battle later, but you haven't really told me much about how your campaign went after the dwarves. Well, you said you stuck to the desert territories, sort of taking out Khalida.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking at the Mortal Empires map, but sort of take me on the journey of, because 180 turns is pretty far in.
Yeah.
I mean, where are you right now? I mean,
currently like at 190.
Yeah, like what's the situation looking like?
Pretty okay, I'd say. Like at the moment I'm at war with like Corone, Reichland, Karazakarak, Hexawaddle, Lothern, although they're like on their last legs. Just because like I've been at war with Lothern for a long time because I got dragged into it with Malekith.
Yeah.
And thankfully that happened before the whole Order Confederation happened. But eventually, just because they were all military allies, I had to declare war on Hexawaddle because he was pushing too far north. And that province right there, I'm not too sure if you're familiar, but when the chaos comes, the one chaos faction spawns in the waters like north of One, right below like Blacklight Tower and like Twisted Glade, that sort of area. So you get like a huge chaos tide in there that kind of raises everything. And Malekith held that before, and then he kind of got like swept out of there. And then Hexawaddle was coming up, and Mazda Mundi was like sort of leading the charge. And I was like, all right, we got to start somewhere. So I kind of situated myself with Malice in the southern mountains there with like a couple other armies there to sort of strike at Karazakarak as soon as I declared war. And I hold a little bit of Ulthuan, like I have Kothik and Trace, so like the northeastern corner there. And as well as Kalidor, which I snagged from Malekith before he could grab it. And he holds like the rest of Ulthuan, so I don't really want to take Bretonnia, so I sent an army there over to just like raise and also like make sure they're not coming back at me. And then like as soon as that whole thing went down, I sort of defeated Mazda Mundi's front force and pushed him back, and at the moment sort of like pushing that whole thing back down, so I'm like pushing back towards like Marathi starting territory because that's all Hexawaddle at the moment. And basically just fighting a war on like 15 different fronts all at once.
You're spread across. Yeah, you've got a very fractured empire. I mean, I guess it all starts with holding on to Graef, which is definitely I like that option. You can even I watched one guy that I like watching, Strategy Professor. He plays on Legendary, and he just gave up. He did Mortal Empires, but he just got rid of everything down in the that original southeastern position in the sea over there.
Yep.
And just moved everything back to Graef.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was kind of like, if I wanted to do that type of campaign, I would just play as Malekith.
Just play Malekith, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can see holding on to both, but I was like, if I was just gonna give it all up, I'd just play as Malekith. What?
Yeah, because like honestly, you can confederate Malice early enough playing as Malekith that you can like literally do Malice's campaign, but without his like possession thing.
Yeah,
you can. Yeah, he'll literally probably take a city or two in the Dragon Isles, and you can do that. Totally separately, but yeah, to me that's not really the point. And I found like giving up Hagriff as soon as you're done sort of like the immediate area around you, it starts getting pretty dire, just because the only person to fight that holds territory that is usable for you is Karazar Karak or Black Crag. Like one of the two is taking up most of that territory.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind trying the Mortal Empires campaign because it's not even really close to the Vortex campaign. Like you said, your Black Ark gets locked in to that arbitrary part of the ocean.
Yeah.
At Clan Eshin, there's no slow burn on that. You just go straight to war with them after you take care of the Lizardmen there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is good because Clan Eshin kept sending armies at me from like they confederated. I think that I'm not sure which one. Maybe they confederated Clan Scryer or something. But
Okay.
they would occasionally send an army or two into my Southland territory, and the rat himself never showed up at any point, but he sent a bunch of other generals. And
was
yeah. I got sick of fight. It was just a never-ending tide of the ratmen in that campaign. Like I said, every time you got a shipment ready, it sent like 3 or 4. I think it was always 3 armies, but they always got perpetually worse. And not to mention, I was always at war with Clan Molder, Clan Moors, Clan Pestilence, Clan Scryer.
Yeah.
It was not intentional. It's just that's
kind of how Vortex works out.
Yeah. It makes me wonder. Yeah, maybe is it time for Trutch Craventail?
Oh no! Next week on campaigns we don't want to do.
No, we're not. I might just force myself to play a couple turns on Vortex for Trutch, because he's giving me a hell of a time on my Hellebort campaign. He's just sending everybody up there.
Well, he gets like free Skaven Slave upkeep, so like he can spam stupid armies at you.
Really?
They're garbage, but like he can send you like a lot of rats.
Well, that's the problem. He just keep hitting settlements I don't have guarding. You know, and I can't be everywhere at once.
And a garrison's not going to hold a 20 staff.
No, not unless it has walls, but I can't afford to do that. But so I guess the forces of evil prevail pretty much in both of our campaigns.
I'm honestly really satisfied with my campaign because I feel like I pretty much fought like every enemy there is in the game, like besides like vampire counts, I think, and I fought chaos, and some of them had Norska units, so I feel like I pretty much like fought one of every faction at least.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. I mean, your Mortal Empire's victory conditions has you everywhere, more or less.
Yeah, like to finish it, you would have to be in every corner of the map. It's kind of insane.
I mean, to be fair, you start in 2 corners, which is kind of helpful.
Yeah, definitely changes it up a little bit.
So I guess that did you have any battles that were like quest battles?
I did have one, which was actually kind of interesting because usually it's Alariel and Lothern that take most of Ulthuan, and usually the other one swallows the other one. But in this case, actually, Alariel and Avalorn was destroyed, And it was actually Lawthorn and Safari, which were splitting at Ulthuan. And I kind of rode in on the eastern side of Ulthuan, like where I sort of took what I said earlier, like Kothik and Trace there. And Safari was like sort of in a stronghold, and also Malekith wasn't on the map, so I was like, okay, well, free territory, and also I have to destroy this faction, so here we go. And actually taking Tor Yvreth, I believe it's pronounced, it's like that right, or like most eastern settlement in Ulthuan is just like that little mountain city like tucked away in there. I threw 2 stacks at it. It had a 20 stack and like a huge garrison, and it was like a crazy long battle. I think they had like 6 or 7 dragons and a couple griffins in there, and it was a fight. It was like my 60-minute timer almost ran out. But other than that, like most of my battles were pretty like one-sided, to be honest. There wasn't a whole lot where I was like, eh.
Yeah, outside those times I got ambushed, it was, well, except that last time I got ambushed where Lokir went, just decided the blob was the best strategy.
Walked into your pit of shades, yes.
It wasn't so much he walked into it, it was just a slow-moving blob that was just inching its way, and perfect. But when Clan Moors hit me with 3 armies at the same time, I was very... I wanted to hit my computer because, like I said, it was 95% success chance on my end.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it fails and they ambush me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a close one because I wasn't sure how I was going to recover from that. But once I beat that one, I didn't really allow myself to get in that situation again. And even when it did happen that one time, I lucked out and the AI screwed up. But it was fairly one-sided. I kept, that Beastmaster ahead of my army to destroy walls, and having 2 dragons on my side from the very beginning was
that's crazy.
Yeah, getting that right. Like if you sell off Hagrief, you can set yourself up for, a amazing start. It's going to be expensive, but if you bounce the units between your Black Ark and your main army in Malice, you can. It's very doable. And like I said, getting some Dread Knights again and some Black Dragons right at the beginning is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can essentially pay for it with the head grief. Go from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if I did it again, I probably wouldn't. Well, if I did Mortal Empires, I'd probably sell Hagrief again and just kind of see how it would play out that way. But I don't know. Yeah, it was it was kind of a mixed bag for me. But before we get into like kind of our feelings and final thoughts about it. So the final quest battle where you when you finally have your showdown with Snickich,
right?
In the Vortex campaign, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know how it's set up in the Mortal Empires.
It's not.
It's not. It just happens, or does it not happen?
It's not in there. I went and played it through the battles because there's it doesn't happen in the Mortal Empires.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's kind of sad.
Yeah, like I don't know. Maybe there's a way to like trick it, but Eshin got destroyed right off the bat because the game makes you fight them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm 180 turns in. I don't know how else to activate it. Other than like getting a long campaign victory, but I didn't have time.
So the mission itself, you're sending in your final shipment overseas to Malekith, and the whole map is on. You start off on your Black Ark,
right?
And there are 2 bridges from the Black Ark to land, and you've got 2 armies of Clan Eshin coming at you, and you've got a small reinforcing army way across the map trying to make its way to you. I don't know what the purpose of that is, because they didn't seem to do much.
Yeah, like for me, they just kind of came in at the end and cleaned up, but yeah,
they were like, this ain't our fight.
Yeah.
The map's design was kind of cool. You get like 2 entrances to your side, and Clan Eshin is really making a push.
Yeah.
All the while, different illusions of Snickage pop up, and you'll have like 4 of them running around, and you have to figure out which one is the right one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. He's got a lot of Death Runners, He's got a Doom Wheel. He's got
Some
a lot of
Jeziles come in at some point.
yeah. He's got some Jeziles that come in, and he throws a lot of shit at you all at once. And I wasn't a huge fan of the quest battle because it seems like you're not really doing anything. You're just
Mhm.
he just comes to you.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of room to maneuver. You don't have a lot of setup. He just comes straight for you, and you're just chasing around illusions of Snickage until you basically beat up his army and kill him, or chase him off the map because
Right.
he's too fast to actually kill.
Yeah. I found with like when I played it, just because it wasn't my sort of army comp, meaning there was only 3 shades. It was kind of hard just because it was like chariots and dread knights on like a fairly small map with not enough maneuverability to make them really viable. So
Yeah.
it was pretty tough, like for me to do it, like even on normal difficulty, because it was you don't have a very good match because the troops it gives you are not great, but that's just me not being able to play it.
Well, I also can relate because, like I said, I was trying to stick with, what he was good at, and
Right.
I had like 3 units of Dread Knights, and like you said, they're almost useless on that map. And fortunately, it was the final battle for me because I think I got 2 of them killed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a good place for your Scourge Runner chariots, which I had 2 of. They
Mhm.
basically sat in back, and I don't know how much friendly fire they were causing, but not a. I just didn't like the feel of the map. It's got the bridges that cross over onto land. They have like these weird angles to them where they just jut up into the air.
Yeah, it kind of gives them like superiority to fire down on.
Yeah, and I'm like, who designed this thing? This does not seem. It doesn't make sense to loading troops onto there or items.
Yeah.
It's just like this weird, awkward.
Have you guys heard of ramps? A ramp's
Yeah.
not a thing in this universe.
You built this giant floating fortress, but you can't get a ramp.
Yeah.
Very, very bizarre. So yeah, it had the interesting map aside from the bridges / ramps that just shoot up into the air at 70-degree angles.
Yeah.
And Snickage kind of bouncing around. But again, you don't even get the full effect from that because everybody bum rushes you. So even with Snickage jumping around, he's just constrained to that one little area on the that you're fighting on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd like to try it with like an army I'd actually bring, but
You'd probably devastate him because like it sounds like I brought the exact wrong army that it gives you, when you
Yeah.
just play it just to play it. So if I had an army, like if I knew what I was going into, it would probably be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like it was. I can't even say it was hard because everything just rushed at me and I just kept throwing stuff around, trying to chase down Snickage. I can't say there's a lot of strategy involved other than just kind of reacting.
Yeah, because you kind of just get bogged down with clan rants. At least on the main ridge, it just kind of just sends wave after wave of shit infantry. And the flanking force kind of comes from the other bridge.
And that's where you get the Jeziles. And fortunately, because of the way the terrain is set up, they have to get a lot closer. And that's where my Dread Knights were put to good use. But they come in with the Doom Wheel. I think more Death Runners come over from there.
Yeah, I got a bunch in from there.
So I think if you had more of an infantry-focused army, you'd do a lot better on that final battle. I think it probably wouldn't even be that hard on the higher difficulty. Just add,
Yeah, like honestly, like my normal army composition, which is like 6 to 8 shades, wouldn't have an issue with that. It was just I had like no missiles and 4 units of like cavalry and chariots that aren't very much use in no maneuverability zone.
Yeah, it's hard to describe how little maneuverability you have. There's not much room to play with.
Yeah,
And,
it's not like a flanking thing.
No, and it doesn't help either because they've got they've got a lot of Skaven with missile units, and they have the armor piercing on their slingers and whatever other units they have as well. So they are doing damage. If not a lot at once, it's just they have the high ground because of the stupid way Dark Elves build bridges.
Yeah.
So you're just constantly getting worn down, and they do a fair bit of damage throughout the course of the short but intense fight.
Yeah. Plus it's Skaven, so they leave for a little bit and they'll come back eventually, and there's no real way to like chase them down because you're just like stopped at 2 fronts.
No, yeah, you can't really pursue any of them because you're getting hit from both sides, and there's a little, and Snickich just keeps popping up, so you gotta try and bog him down as well, long enough to get some damage in.
Yeah, it's a fun battle. I just want to try it with something that I decide.
I thought the Kolek battle was more fun. I mean, it was more.
Warp Sword fight is good.
Yeah, I liked it better because, again, I don't know why I can't get over those bridges, man. It's such a small thing, but it really irritated me.
Who makes ramps triangles?
Yeah, triangles. That's what
Why
they are.
Does it stick up?
No sense there. It only gives the enemy the high ground if they're the aggressing force, which they are. You don't even have time.
Turning me into Anakin.
Well, fortunately, they try to come down off, but eventually you got to go up to beat them.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, what do you think of the possession mechanic? Because I'm of mixed feelings with it. You used it a lot more than I did, I think.
I didn't really like use it to like full effect. I wasn't like, ooh, let's take a potion and get like some growth here. Or it was mostly just like, I need replenishment. I'm taking an elixir. And for the most part, I tried to keep it like fairly high just because there's a point that it can't go past. And like taking the 10 off with the elixir puts it back to 0, which, yeah, like I said, I just didn't push it into the minus zones. So it was mostly between 0 and 10, basically when I needed replenishment. And I think I allowed full possession once when I was like, okay, I need to win this battle, and it doesn't look good.
Yeah, I did that for the final battle. And I think Kolek too. I did full possession. Did you ever do any of Zarkan's missions that he gives you? Occasionally, I'd get a nice and easy one where it's like declare war and somebody is already going to fight anyway.
Yeah, I did some of them when they were easy. I got one that was like 36,000 battle captives or something like that. And I was like, dude, how am I supposed to do this in 10 turns? It was like so many. I'd have to be fighting like 3 battles a turn to even get close. I was like fighting a decent amount, and I was like, okay, how am I doing on this? I'm at 19,000 after 9 turns. Okay. Like, for the most part, they were either like softballs, like, oh, I was going to do that, or it was just like, I can't do that.
Yeah, that I don't know if that was a problem of RNG, but I got the same thing. They're total softballs, no brainers. I was like, oh, it's right there. I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And then other times it was like, go attack the city that's way so far out of my way. I'd have to fight through, miles of enemy territory just to get to it. And I'm like, is it even worth the amount of losses I'm going to incur? And
and part of me was like trying to justify it, like, oh, if I had a demon from the Chaos Waste whispering in my ear, he might tell me to do something like stupid and violent for no reason. But it's a little too stupid and violent.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, the rewards were good. Like, I won't say like the cash he was offering wasn't high, but it wasn't high enough because it was too stupid, like you said. Like, I'm going to make more money doing this the smart way than I am going to, make a bum rush and possibly lose my entire army trying to get to this,
Yeah. I got lots where it was like, oh, I'm going to do that eventually, but not in the next couple turns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much how it worked out.
I mean, I get it's difficult. It's trying to generate quests that the game thinks that are reasonable enough to try and tempt you with.
Yeah.
And I think it probably would have benefited more from asking me to go to war with people and being like, "Hey, just declare war on them, and you'll get 10,000 G, man." And
Yeah.
kind of fuck up your reliability rating. I think that
Yeah,
would
that would have been really good.
Yeah, it's like, "Hey, if you split with Malekith, I'm gonna give you a ton." You don't need him.
Yeah,
do you?
exactly. That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Like, hey, how does 20,000 slaves for ditching your buddy's house?
Yeah, and maybe it could wait.
Considerable.
Yeah, maybe it could wait until you're in a really desperate situation, and I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like those quests could have been done better, just because it added possession as well. So I'm like, on top of everything else, I just don't need this.
Yeah, and the adding possession never made a difference to me because you're always getting possessed.
Yeah,
It's always increasing, and you can kind of the way I used it. I was definitely usually in the negatives. I would go through a phase where I'd let it get high. I'd do some conquering, trying to enslave to make up, because at least if you enslave or loot and occupy, you do get some of your forces back.
Yeah.
And that helps you keep going if you want to be in them as aggressive as you can get.
Right.
Which I didn't do fairly often. I liked having the low possession because it increases public order everywhere, increases growth remarkably everywhere, and it also increases the loyalty of your generals, which wasn't too much of a big deal because I usually, if I had them, they were raiding or they were fighting, so they're always getting something. But I
don't usually have a problem with loyalty with the Dark Elves.
See, when I don't think when I didn't know how to play as the Dark Elves, I always had a problem with loyalty. Maybe I can see how you can't really use them as a holding force. I mean, especially if you don't have a lot of items to give them, because you can kind of string them along if you recruit a little bit here and there and raid. So I like that, but I feel like the possession thing was a great idea, but honestly, I kind of ignored it. I just I was making enough money through the my slave economy that was very efficient. That buying the potions was never really. I never really had to ask myself the question: Can I afford this or not?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it was because I sold Hagrief early on, but it was just like, okay, I've conquered the city. I need the replenishment. And the growth and public order doesn't hurt as well. So why not just take it all the way to -10?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good thought, just not well executed.
Yeah, it was executed well enough. I just wish the temptations were there. Like I said,
basically, yeah.
They should have been real temptations. Getting you to, if you got after I got my non-aggression pact with the last offenders, that would have been an interesting one if it kind of teased me into going to war with them.
Hey, no.
Just to try and get you to be alone. It's just you and the demon. Maybe that's what its whole goal should have been about. Do you have what else is there really to say about this campaign other than well, you did the war on two fronts. You kept Hagrief. What was that like, keeping Hagrief in Mortal Empires?
The difference is actually kind of astounding. It kind of turns the expedition into easy mode. You can do really, really well if you sell Hagrief and keep the money, obviously, and use it to, you basically use it to found another army and go from there, because by the time that money runs out, you have probably taken a couple more territories and can actually manage the upkeep. So it gives you a lot easier early game, but it makes the sort of mid to end game harder because you're stuck in this one corner of the map and you got to push through Karazak or someone similarly as strong to get to basically anything, because obviously the desert and the wasteland where the greenskins usually are is basically a no-go because it's all red territory. Whereas with keeping Headgrief, you are fighting a war on two fronts. For me, I just sort of consolidated that province, turned it into a slave province, and made it my moneymaker, and tried to just like keep everyone away.
Yeah.
But it slows down the early game for sure. And I think I just got lucky, honestly, with Eshin not doing well, because I ended up actually just going through that territory pretty easily, as well as keeping Headgriefs. It worked out for me, but it's much more of a gamble, and it makes it a lot harder to push in both directions, actually.
Yeah, I mean it's never easy to fight a war on two fronts, especially when you're getting no support down in that corner of the world. But I guess at least if you lose it, the game's not over because you still have Headgrief back at home.
Yeah, and I do feel like if you are someone who wants to go after like campaign victories and actually get it, you almost have to keep Headgrief, because otherwise you're in this like bottom corner in the map and you push all the way through everything and like forget even going to Ulthuan anytime soon, because it's going to be a long time.
Yeah, I can see on Mortal Empires, so definitely keeping Headgrief. But also, I don't think you should abandon those colonies that you start off with.
Yeah.
Because if you do well down there, then there's a lot of materials that get magically transported to your capital for trading. And it's a good way to, get that economy going.
For sure. My trade agreement with Malekith was worth like 1,000 a turn, just because of how many like extra supplies I got from like both ends of the region.
Yeah, and with his 50% increased productivity of any mines, like you said, you're taking over the mountains and getting a lot of resources that directly apply to him. So all that goes to the greater good. Real quick, I did find the trait that I kind of liked on. So right next to it, you got contempt and hatred. That you said, with hate, all things are possible. Weapon strength plus 20% when fighting against anything and everything.
I love it.
I love it too. You gotta get it.
Good.
The one, for some reason, I liked it. Maybe it's because I work so damn much. But like I said earlier, when he's awake, he is himself Malice. But when he sleeps, he's he's Zarkand. And what the elixir does is just keeping him awake. So like in my campaign, I imagine that he was basically awake for like months on end. Yeah. And it's the trait is Drakau Tyrant. Sleepless nights afford the Lord of Headgrief time to viciously and efficiently tackle tedious matters. Like taxes, always taxes. And I just imagine him like, if you can't sleep, then eventually you're probably just going to be like, I guess I'm going to balance my checkbook. And just get
well,
I've never done that in my life, but I guess if you have the time where you're awake for days on end, it's like I guess I might as well get good at this.
I'm not doing anything else. Like,
yeah,
can only be malicious and hateful like 90% of the day.
You can't spend all day at the orgy. Eventually, you don't want to burn out on something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But so what would you say makes Malus Darkblade renowned and/or feared?
Dun dun dun. Malus is kind of an interesting one. I actually thought about this a lot, just because his desire, both as a dark elf and just being him and his angsty self, really that's his goal. Like, being renowned and feared is kind of his thing, second to being Malekith's lapdog. It's like, be friends with Malekith, second, take over everything and show people how badass I am. So he's definitely known for his exploits, but I think in the end, like, that's his goal, is to be renowned and feared.
Yeah, it's almost like the only reason why he opts to be second to Malekith is because his his prime directive is to be seen as a badass, and being in charge comes second to that. Like he is only in charge of an army or his empire just to facilitate. Like Marcus wanted to hunt big creatures and monsters, thus he had to conquer some territories. Malus wants to be an edgy badass, and needs an army to do that as well.
Yeah, means to an end.
And also he's like, he's got the Fight Club story going on, sort of. He's he's got an alternate personality that just whispers hateful and derogatory things towards him. And it is funny when you move him around the map and he's like convincing himself that he's choosing to do these things.
Yeah. After like 200 and I don't know, probably close to 300 turns I've played as Malus in the last couple weeks, I'm a little over his just like screams when you click on him sometimes. Just like, oh, I'm like, okay, dude, it's okay.
I'm gonna be honest, probably for like the last like 30 turns I had like no sound because like I was like watching my son, and like I can't play with like the headphones on, and I would see the screen turn pink when I knew Zarkand was like saying something, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Oh yeah. What is it now?
I mean, again, if you're gonna pay a voice actor to do that, like they should have come up with more detailed things. Like when Zarkand comes up with a mission, maybe say something applicable to that, or they could have done. I think they lost an opportunity, or maybe I'm expecting too much from like a strategy game.
Yeah.
But I think they could have had some fun with it. If you look into the writing, like the Greenskins or the Norskins, if you look into their missions and how they're written out, like in text, some of them are pretty fucking hilarious, man. like somebody put some thought into how like the missions and how some of the messages got written into the game, and it's I get a lot of work went into the unit designs, and definitely the map got extended, and I like that.
Yeah.
I do like the starting positions of both him and Clan Eshin on both maps. There's a lot to love. I mean, they fixed the end turn timer on this one? Was it on this?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of huge additions. I just Clan Eshin got some love too with their own unique their assassination contracts and stuff. I don't know. That's why I'm gonna say I'm leaving this campaign a little mixed. Like the one thing I enjoyed about it most is I do have a love for the Dark Elves now. Like I said, I've been playing a legendary campaign of Helibrant, and I think I'm on the verge of losing it, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'll survive. But I do like their units. I've gotten very comfortable with how they work. I like they've got an answer to almost everything. Not all the time, but they do have an answer to almost everything.
Although, if you use shades, you'll have an answer to everything.
Well, with Helibrand, when you go on your Blood Knight like sacrifice things, it boosts your witch elves like crazy amounts to where they have like a ridiculous amount of like ward save, and it makes them pretty beastly. So I've been having fun with that, but I got to try the shades. I promise you, I'll try the shades. Maybe I'll do a Malekith Mortal Empires or something.
Yeah, I'm just like blown away. You never even tried.
Well, like I said, I never get into late game, and this was the first Dark Elf campaign I really, I did a few turns of like Marathi and
Shades are
Malekith.
Second tier.
What's that? Shades
are 2 second tier.
Yeah, but it's not obvious what you need them for. I'm just saying, I've got my spearmen, I already have my armor piercing archers. Like, what do I need shades for? Like, it just seemed, until you experiment with them, they seem redundant.
You do have to use them a little bit different, but
I know they're Yeah, no, I assume they're equivalent. I played a bit of a Lithanar from the High Elves, and he has like a unit that's sort of like the Shades. Doesn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah. Shadow Walkers and
Yeah,
Shadow Warriors are the two that do the same sort of thing.
yeah,
Except
and then
they have snipe, so they can fire from cover.
yeah, the snipe is awesome.
Yeah. So Shades aren't quite as good as like Shadow Warriors, although they do have a higher unit count. So you're gonna get more shots off into whatever you're shooting.
And they do have great swords, which is nice.
Yeah, and they're better in melee. So yeah.
No,
Play some Shades.
yeah, I got to try them out.
Yeah. Well, I am leaving this campaign feeling fantastic. I loved it. I was a little skeptical going into it because I played Malekith before. I played a little bit of Lokir. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Malice has a start. Like, I don't know how I feel about like playing Dark Elves. And I was like, by turn like 50, I was like, this is the most amazing campaign. It's not so much the like separate mechanics that come with Malice, but I love playing the Dark Elves, and I like having a lot to go up against, if that makes sense. Like, you can really do whatever you want with this campaign. So if you want like total freedom, Malice is probably one of the best for sure.
You know, I'm 100% on board with you on that. I definitely recommend playing this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the possession mechanic, once you get into the flow of it, you kind of, like I said, I kind of forgot it was there. I just noticed, you know, it was going up, and I'm like, am I getting into a fight anytime soon? Nah, I'll take another drink. Like I said, that if you get that economy going, you just kind of forget that it even costs you anything, really. And the missions that Zarkan gives you are often too ridiculous. You'll look at them and you'll be like, that's not happening.
Fuck off, Zarkan.
Yeah, and it's like you're a terrible demon. Like you're supposed to make me an offer too good to refuse, and like you can't seem to make that happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still recommend it. Like you said, lots of freedom. Campaign can go any sort of way, Vortex or Mortal Empires. Like I said, it gave me a new appreciation for the Dark Elves and their unique facets. Learning how to master the slave trade was fun. You know, it's fun being a bad guy every now and again.
Awesome.
Well, any other closing thoughts? I guess I think we about covered it.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much got through it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. This about concludes this episode of Renowned and Feared. I'm going to say this marks the end of the episode. If you'd like to stick around, we'll have a bit of the post show where me and Archer will go back to just a normal conversation because we'll have to. We're going to figure out what we're going to play over the next fortnight. Not Fortnite the game, but 2 weeks from now.
This just in, we're switching to a Fortnite podcast.
It's a sharp right turn right there. Well, Fortnite, I used to love whenever I had the opportunity to point out something was 2 weeks from now, because then I could use the word Fortnite, and then that game stole that away from me. It
ruined it.
Yeah.
Now I can't talk like a medieval duke.
It's God damn it. Take everything I love away from me. Yeah, so you could have asked for a break, man.
No, it's all good. I was kind of feeling it, so I was like, oh, I'll just finish. And then it got really bad. I was like, no more final thoughts from me.
I'm good to go. Uh, sorry if I didn't bring the high energy this time. That was really my bad, man. I fucked up with my sleep schedule.
No, it's all good. I felt a lot better than I did last time. I was a little bit more nervous, and this time I was like, I had lots of fun.
No, I'm glad you did. And it's not that I didn't have lots of fun. I didn't experience the mid-game hump, or maybe that's because I'm getting more into it, like I described last time. Like I definitely was engaged from beginning to end.
Mhm.
I just didn't. I didn't really like the final quest battle, and
Fair.
yeah, and then the possession mechanic I thought was going to be more interesting, but it ended up being the campaign was more interesting than the possession mechanic. Like they could have just taken that out, or maybe they couldn't have. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, if they want to play it as Malice, then not so much, but
Yeah,
could have been done differently. Yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot more than TBH.
no, but I like the Marcus's actually a lot more. But
I'm glad we have different opinions.
yeah,
Brings more to the table.
Yeah, no, but like I said, I'm still glad I did. It was a good, it was a really good campaign. I'm not going to argue that.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, obviously, we're doing Lostra, next.
Okay. I don't know what you were planning. If you had any thoughts about playing next, but
I get no idea.
okay, because this is like the stupidest reason for it, but I may or may not have, but definitely did get really high and watch the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and now I just want to play Vampire Coast.
Dude, I am down for the Vampire Coast, but who do we pick though? Luther Harkon, you get Count Noctilus, and Arnessa Saltspite. I mean,
Yeah, I was thinking Luther or what's his name? Yeah, Count Noctilus, just because Saltspite's kind of boring and Silastra is a waste of time.
Yeah, I kind of like Saltspite's Mortal Empires starting position.
Yeah,
you also get those free, what are they? They're like free company. They're like actual living pirates, which I really like. But I started a Count Noctilus campaign that I really liked. I mean, let's see. I am leaning towards Count Noctilus, but if you have a strong feeling towards Luther Harkon, I mean, that's up to you.
No, I was actually leaning towards Noctilus because I don't want to play through Lustria too much again.
Yeah. Yeah, you can avoid it if you just want to.
Yeah, and I feel like not that I've played a huge amount of Vampire Coast, but I feel like Noctilus is a bit more of a free campaign. Like you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, he's out in the middle of nowhere. He just seems like he's got like that boss. Like I'm looking at his character select screen. He's definitely got the like he's the Malekith of the Vampire Coast sort of thing.
How so?
He's got he's definitely a melee focused guy, and he's got a magic as well.
Oh, okay. In that sense. So I was like, Luther Harkon's kind of like the big baddie, but whatever you feel.
Oh, you do? I don't know. Count Noctilus has a sweet hidden kind of like base in the Galleon's graveyard.
Yeah, no, I'd agree there. He's definitely more piratey feeling.
And I'm definitely down for it because I know you get I haven't really done too much of the Vampire Coast. I did a little bit way back when, but I know they get a little bit of a horde faction thing going on with their ships that are like black. So I think I'm gonna do a Mortal Empires with this one because I'm kind of done with the Vortex campaign. Just because I've done 2 Dreadfleet Vortex campaigns before that I sort of started, and every time I just ended up going into Lustria or Ulthuan. And like the game in Vortex pushes you hard to go to Ulthuan, and once you're there, you're kind of like invested in fighting just every single high elf army that's there.
Yeah,
and I definitely want a more free forming type of adventure on the high seas.
Yo ho, yo ho.
Yeah, I just you have no idea how bad I would like to get stoned and play this game. I miss it so much. Why did I have to get a job that doesn't let